السلام عليكم. هلا والله ابو محمد، يا مرحبا. ايش الملحمة المصطفى؟ ايه قلت بفتح ستريم شوي وبروح اخلص لي كم شغلة واجي، بس عشان اتاكد ان كل شيء مضبوط. طيب بحكم باقي نص ساعة في فيديو ابغى اشوفه. نشوفه.
Cyclone, which I've talked about in my video yesterday, which you can check in the right upper corner with some new footage from Gamescom that wasn't shared in the trailer. But today I will show you the rest of them. First up, we got Blade Plunge. Now, good news, there are no charges required as we all feared, but Blade Plunge here seems to have a lot of versions of the skill, a lot of like buffed versions, if you will. And the description is quite crazy. So you plunge your blade into the ground, damaging nearby targets and sending out multiple fissures that trigger Buried Blade when they end. We don't really know what Buried Blade is yet, but all Buried blades explode after you finish channeling, and channeling for an additional attack time primes the buried blades, causing their explosions to deal more damage in a larger area. Using this skill, now most of these skills are both blood stance and sand stance, and both offer something else. Blood stance is just mostly bleed, and sand stance probably just pure physical, some discs. So
شو الحين هذه ثاني مهارة الحين. عرفت يقول لك using the skills from blood stance or sand stance. يعني هل البلد والساند بتصير مهارة لحالها ولا بتصير يعني مبنية داخل المهارة ولا وشو الوضع؟ اوكي. اور ساند ديسك اوكي الراوند اوكي، لأنه هذه الساند ديسك نفس الشيء في السايكلون.
blood pools or sand discs around the buried blades, damaging nearby targets or enemies for as long as you hold the skill. So some of these skills seem to be channeling and also attack time, and that was my worry, right? We all know that maces suck big time because of the total attack time, and this is a second or third skill that's channeling and having total attack time, so we'll see how that really feels.
عليكم السلام على حياك الله.
This skill seemed pretty good for AoE, but I don't know, I'm just worried about channeling skills for like on clearing maps. Could be good on bosses, but we shall see about that. Again, there is a explosion, lightning bolts, blood ground, sandis. There is just a lot affected here. Now, my favorite skill of them all is this war cry, Intimidate. Perform a war cry, intimidating nearby enemies and empowering subsequent melee attacks to trigger a damaging shockwave on hit. Now this skill can be bypassed by expending endurance charge, just like any other war cry. Now what intimidate means is you deal more damage
والله الجديد بنعرفه ان شاء الله بعد 35 دقيقة.
deals less damage by 10%.
في الستريم
حقهم. This is amazing. I'm a big fan of that. Obviously, we don't know the numbers on the shockwave, so we shall see about that. Now, Earth Rend is another skill. This is a duration base, so gouge the ground with your sword, creating a damaging fissure that causes a blade to erupt at its terminus. If used from ready stance, we don't really know how to get ready stance, or there will be a mention in one of the skills, but instead create a series of blades along the length of the fissure. This seems a pretty good skill.
والله محمد توني عنده الاسم قرنقش.
Anything similar to earthquake, you could
والله الاسم خطير.
duration so it explodes faster, if that's what they mean by damaging fissure. But we shall see about that. Other skill, we got Sand Scour, so step backwards and slash forward while flinging sand, blinding enemies and heavy stunning enemies that are primed for stun. Consuming a frenzy charge if possible to... Okay, I was lying. There is a frenzy charge. If possible to additionally fire sand disc. This skill can be used while using other skills to interrupt them so you can animation cancel. That's how I take it. Could be pretty good. Can be held to enter ready stance after use. This is the one I was talking about in previous skill. Or sand stance instead if an enemy was heavy stunned or a frenzy charge consumed. There's just a lot of conditions for these skills, man. Like there's a lot of lines for each of these skills. It's actually insane. So again, Sand Scar, we got Strike, we got Sand Disc, we got Ready Stance. I guess you could combine these two because this requires the Ready Stance. Or like, you know, not requires, but it's more stuff for that. Again, another channeling skill and sustained. So this is a strike ability as well. Now, some of these skills are also penalized when dual wielding. Such as this one is... You have less damage, 30%, but you have separate instances of damage while dual wielding, so that beats even this reduction. It's the same for maces. Multiplicative stun build-up, pretty cool. Next up, we got Engage, another strike skill, so step forward with your weapon, causing knockback and stun build-up. Hitting enemy that has been parried consumes the debuff to cause an explosion around them and grant you a frenzy charge. This skill can be used while using other skills to, again, another animation cancel. This will be similar to the parry from the buckler. I don't really think this will be used as much, maybe on bosses, but I don't know, maybe the step forward will be good. Attack damage 144% on level 13. I believe all these skills are showed as a level 13. Again, added attack time on this skill, by the way, but it's okay. Like 0.25 shouldn't be that bad. Let me check the others. Attack damage very low on the other one, and then Blade Lunge. Interesting. Alright, so that was Engage. Next up, we got World Cutter. This seems to be very good for single target for bosses, similar to Supercharged Slam on maces, but channel to encase your sword with power and release to cleave the world in twain. Each stage increases the area and damage of strike. This skill has its own attack time. Again, channeling and attack time. Why, man? So level 3.
لا شوف أنا ما أتوقع أصلا أنهم في ستريم اليوم راح يتكلمون عن السورد ولا عن الدولست، لأنه ما أتوقع أنهم بيتهورون وينزلون الدولست في الأبديت الجاي. المفروض الدولست ينزل في الفول ريليس 1.0. فالمهارات هذه كلها لو تلاحظ كلها حقت سورد، يعني المفروض انها تنزل مع الاصدار الكامل، مهم مع الابديت هذا. الا عاد اذا مثل ما قلت اذا فاجئونا ونزلوا الدولست مع السورد ممكن. انا اشوف انها نسبة قليلة جدا. عموما بشكل عام انا اصلا الابديت هذا ما اشوف انه، او اتوقع انه ما راح يغير الكثير، يعني بيكون تركيزهم كله منصب يمكن على تعديل بقات شيء. ما أتوقع يصير فيه بالانس، ولا أتوقع يعني في أشياء جديدة، لكن يظل كل شيء وارد. الحين هذه كلها تو هاند سورد، لا حتى بعضها يجي، لا هذا تو هاند، ايه أشوفها ريكويرز تو هاند، بس في وحدة قبلها لا، وينها؟ شفت هذه ون هاند تو هاند. هذه سايكلون أيوه.
Next up, Cyclone. We have talked about it yesterday, but this is a strike ability Cyclone, so passive like Tribal Fury, which
أغلب ستريمر ما هم متحمسين مع الأبديت. إيه لأن ما إيش أقول لك، يعني صعب إنهم يضيفون أشياء جديدة. هم أصلا بيكون يعني شوف عندهم الآن هم حدثين جاية. عندهم إكزايل كون شهر 11 أتوقع فيهم 6 و7 بيكونون لاهين فيه، وعندهم الفول ريليس أو الإصدار النهائي. ولا تنسى ترى الاستديو صغير، عرفت؟ أتوقع يمكن إنك تقدر تجمع موظفينهم بشقة. وش يعني وش بيغطون وش بيخلون؟ لأنه بعد على الكلام اللي طالع إنه بيصير فيه ليج جديد، الباث اوف اكزايل 1 اللي هو بيصير رقمه 3.30، برضو بينزل قبل ما ينزل الإصدار النهائي من باث اوف اكزايل 2. عشان كذا ممكن يعني الأغلب ما هم متحمسين، لكن نص ساعة ويبان كل شيء.
adds splash to your strike skills will be amazing for AoE. So channel to spin rapidly, damaging targets around you moving forward. Now overlapping, what's interesting is overlapping an elemental ground surface takes on that element. So stuff like Wake of Destruction boots that make you have permanent shocked ground underneath you, this skill will be affected by it. So that's really cool. You could have permanent like lightning cyclone. That's amazing, right? Applying the surface debuff to enemy hits. Using this skill from blood and sand stances causes blood waves or sand discs to fly out for the first few seconds of channeling. We have seen it in the footage. They showcase this as well. So actually, yeah,
لا
that was
أتوقع
pretty cool.
يمكن
Now again, there's
الجمعة
a penalty
الجاية،
while dual wielding.
مو
It's
بكرة
less
يعني،
attack
أتوقع
speed this
الجمعة اللي
time.
بعدها.
Not the biggest fan
عليكم
because I
السلام على
plan to do
ميكس.
this with dual wield, but I'm afraid this penalty will be just too huge. Like this is also a multiplicative reduction, so that's not good instead of additive. But for damage, yeah, it could be good. More movement speed while channeling, multiplicative is pretty good. You cannot be knocked back while channeling, I guess. Each of the enhancements are last for 8 seconds. Now the last skill we got is Perforate, also one of the popular skills in PoE1. So step forward 3 times in rapid succession, sounds like rapid strikes from the spear. The final strike in the sequence drills forward, causing rapid additional hits that inflict bleeding. Using this skill from ready stance immediately performs the final strike and additionally causes the drill's first hit against each enemy to release a blood nova if you're in blood stance or sand discs if
وش
you're in
صار؟
stand stance.
تو ما عاد صار شيء يا
Pretty cool
ميكس.
design with these stances, but
هذه بس هذه المهارات حقت السورد بدأوا الناس ينزلونها، لأنهم هم في المعرض اللي في ألمانيا جيمز كوم عندهم في البوث حقهم متيحين تجربة اللي حاب يجي يجرب اللعبة، فأكيد الناس بدأت تصور يعني.
reduction with when dual wielding, which is okay. 20% reduction damage if you have extra instants, that's not too bad. And the discs hit every 0.15 seconds, which is very fast. They get extra AoE over 0.4 seconds, not too bad. And magnitude of bleeding. So this seems to be mainly a bleed skill. So maybe bleed will finally make its way on top with the introduction of duelist, because it seems to be very focused on the bleed, especially in blood stances. So that will be pretty much it for the skills itself. Let me guys know what you think about them. Again, pretty cool design with these stances, blood and sand stance. Now in PoE1, that used to be an aura that gave you extra damage at the cost of less AoE in blood stance, and in sand stance you get more AoE but less damage. So I'm curious to see how this will work with these skills. The attack damage numbers on the skills don't seem as high. I mean, obviously it does on World Cutter as level 13. The Cyclone may be pretty good as well, like it's 7 to 8%, but it's channeling ability. This could be very rough on the mana sustain if it's 25 per second, and it gets even increased if you have other modifiers to attack speed, which will be interesting. I wonder if this less attack speed affects the mana then, you know, if it's modifier to attack speed. Maybe, but I kind of wish we would see all the other effects in the other stances or the other upgrades of the skill. I would love to see that. Now this will enter your in ready stance, and then you can perform Perforate. Interesting how this will work. I heard from some people that play this in Gamescom that this is a lot of a combo based character from the skills. But
شفت هذه أنا مشكلتي مع التوجه الجديد حقهم، وهذا اللي أنا لاحظته حتى في التيزر أو التشويقة اللي نزلوها، والحين هذا يأكد الكلام أن التوجه الآن اللعب كله أنه يصير كومبو. أنا ما أحب نوعية ذي من طريقة اللعب، سالفة أنه أنا لازم أسوي بيري علشان ما أدري أضرب بقوة، ولا أنا ما أحب ذا الأشياء، أنا دائما عندي مشكلة معها. فيعني هم الآن ما تعلموا من السبير من الأشياء ذي، فبيرجعون يعيدون نفس الخطأ. صعب يعني، يمكن كثير من الناس ما يتقبل الأسلوب هذا في اللعب. يعني أنا ألعب أكشن RPG، لا تقعد تدخلني في وسط، يعني تحط لي لعبة في وسط لعبة، لا لازم أقعد أوقت صح علشان أسوي بيري، فاضي لك أنا.
Again, that was probably a campaign showcase, nothing endgame. So we shall see about it. Again, thank you very much, guys, for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And you guys have a great one. Until next time, peace.
شكرا. ايه بالضبط. سالفة اني انا لازم اقعد اوقت ولازم ما هي بشغلة ذي. ايه فهذه المشكلة. يعني شوف، اذا كان التوجه هذا كله بيكون مع مهارات السورد فهي مصيبة صراحة. بيقتلون السورد تماما. لا 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 ابو محمد، وش لا، ما في زعل ان شاء الله. لا انا اقول لك، انا لاحظتها من اول ما نزلوا الفيديو. خلنا بس نكتم الصوت حق ذي. من اول ما نزلوا التيزر حقهم هذا ابو اللي مدته دقيقة واتوقع نص ولا كم، انا لاحظت ان الكاركتر يسوي زي البيري، يصد بالسلاح. حلو. ثم من هذا اللي من شوي اللي نشوف الفيديو حقه ذكر نفس المعلومة، قال انه نقلا عن الناس اللي لعبوا بالدولس وبالسورد في المعرض هذا حق جيمزكوم. فيقول انه التوجه العام انه طريقة اللعب بالسيف والمهارات حقت السيف انها بتصير كومبو، يعني لازم تسوي بيري، عرفت، عشان تبدأ تستفيد من الضربة اللي بعدها، او انك تزيد دمج الضربة. فعرفت شو التوجه هذا؟ انا هذا اللي أنا اقصده. انا ما احب التوجه ذا. يعني انت تخيل تبي تروح تفرم بريتش مثلا، انفتح البريتش والعالم جايه فوق بعض، يلا اقعد وقت الضربه علشان تصدها، تسوي بيري علشان تستفيد، تسوي مثلا ايوي اكثر. ما هي بشغله ذي. ايه نفسها، وش اسمها هي ذيك؟ سبن هي، والله ما نسيت شو اسمها، حقت البو. لا لا ما بعد بدأ. والله ما تروح ترقد انت الحين. ايه لا ما بدأ. لا توه. ايه. إيه، باقي 20. طيب يلا تصبح على خير. يلا سك الباب معك لو سمحت. خله يتعلم. لا لا عشان أنا تعبان عاد، فمعطيه وجه أنا. صيخين مساكين. لا عشان يفرم عن، لا لا لسه تو ما بعد وصل المرحلة ذي. هل التحديث راح يصفرون كل شيء؟ لا شوف يا حبيبي، في فرق بين التحديث وفي فرق بين الايفنت حقهم. التحديث هذا بينطبق على كل شيء في اللعبة حتى على ستاندرد. الايفنت هذا بيكون شيء مستقل. الايفنت خلينا نقول لك مثل ليج مصغر، راح يصفرون فيه كل شيء اللي حاب يلعبه، يعني ترى مو بإجباري. فبس هذا هو الفرق بينهم. لكن التحديث لا، التحديث بيكون على مستوى اللعبة كلها. ايه، فنرجع على موضوعنا يا ابو محمد. اذا كانوا كذا هذا هو التوجه ذا حقهم حق الكومبو، عز الله ان السورد راح فيها صراحة. طبعا معلش بس شباب، بفك الصوت، ابي اشوف هل الصوت عندكم زين ولا لا، تسمعونه؟ اوكي زين. يمكن كومبو يمكن كومبو سنجل تارجت. حتى لو هو سنجل تارجت ولا غيره، انا المبدأ كله مو بعاجبني. انا سالفة الكومبو ذي انا ما احبها. طبعا ليش؟ لانك انت الحين عشان انت تسوي الكومبو صح، يعني لازم التوقيت عندك يصير مضبوط. حبيبي احنا نلعب بنج حول 100، شلون اوقت التوقيت صح؟ انا والله لو بنجي 9 10 11 لا، انا بنجنا كلنا نلعب فيه فوق 100. عشاق الومبتو انا اولهم. لا انا حتى شوف، انا من عشاق بدون بتن، فهمت؟ يعني انا واحد من اجمل البلدات عندي كاستون ستان، ما تسوي اي شيء. ايه اذكر حق البليد يا ابو محمد. طيب راح يكون في شرح عن تحديث. ايه شوف الحين هذا العد التنازلي بيصير فيه ستريم شو اسمه لمنتج اللعبة، بيتكلم فيه عن التحديث، وبيتكلم فيه طبعا عن انا نقول لك الاضافات اللي فيه، التعديلات، الاشياء اللي زي كذا. ار اف، اي والله انك صادق. سالفة انهم بيجيبون لي كومبو ذي انا ما في امل اسويها من جد ومن تالي فيه. اي صح صادق. يا اخي هذا من هو ذا؟ ريز كيوتي، وش هو ذا ريز كيوتي؟ كيف شكله؟ وش كيف شكله؟ شكله راقد. ايه انا ابغى اشوف هذا، عرفت هذا ما اذكر اني قد شفته. شوف هذا انا اعرفه، هذا زيكي دي معروف، بس هذا لا، هذا انا ما اعرفه. ورنا الوها مسوي؟ لا ما اتوقع انها مسوي. لا مو فيه، ما جاء. هو ما يحب باث في اكزايل 2 ودور في باث في اكزايل 1. مو موجود. والله يوم باث في اكزايل 1 وسع صدورنا صراحة، ضحكني. لا مو فيه. حاولت قبل فترة اسوي بلد بنفسي في باث 1، دخلت في جدار يا رجل. باث اوف بيلدينج وبحث بالاخير وين شوت ما ببيض. طيب هي عادي، بالعكس هذا يعطيك الحين يعلمك شو المشكلة، تبدأ تحل الأمور الدفاعية. أشوف سالفة إن الواحد يبدأ بلد من الصفر ترى شيء مو بسهل. اي اكيد اكيد يا قرنقش، يبيله معرفة. ايش شكرا، يعطيك العافية على الدعم. المتعة تسوي بلد بنفسك، تخلي مهابيل التمبرالس لحالهم. اخوي انا ما ادري ايش اللعبة اللي الهدف منها انك تروح تجيب تمبرالس، وضعهم مزري. تروح تجيب تمبرالس عشان تسوي بلينك بسرعة. وهي في باث 1 جيم تسوي لك الزحمة ذي كلها. يا هلا والله، مشكور على دعمك حبيبي. دقيقة بالله خلني اقرا المسج حقك. انت تبغى طور اس اس اف. شوف الاس اس اف بكل اختصار انك تلعب اللعبة كذا خلاص مع نفسك، ما في تريد، ما في اكسشينج، تعتمد على اللوت اللي يطيح لك فقط. يعني تلعب اللعبة بدون تداخل وبدون تواصل مع الآخرين. هذا هو الاس اس اف. طبعا وهالشيء اكيد انه ما هو سهل يعني. يا أخي أحب اللعبة بس مرات يطولون السالفة وهي قصيرة. وش قصدك معليش؟ قصدك خالد إنهم يطولون اللعبة؟ ما فهمت. المشكلة ما في لوت يطيح لك لعب فيه. لا 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 فيه لوت، ليش ما فيه؟ لا بالعكس. السيزون اللي راح أو السيزون اللي الآن موجود في باث اوف اكزايل 2 اللي ما بعد خلص ذا، أنا طاح لي فيه تقريبا كل شيء. أنا حتى الميج بلاد طاح لي، الميج بلاد ما طاح لي في 1 طاح لي في 2، وأنا عدد ساعات لعبي في 1 أكثر. يا عز الله اكسبيديشن، اي صادق والله. اكسبيديشن اذكر اول ما طلعوا طريقة الجوز حقته، جلست في اكسبيديشن واحدة يمكن جلست 50 دقيقة. كلامك صح، المشكلة ان البلد تعبان كيف تقوم. لا والله شوف، موضوع انك انت تبدأ البلد ترى العملية سهلة جدا، انك انت تبدأ تطوره شوي شوي. تقدر تطور اي بلد ترى شوي شوي، مو بلازم انك تستعجل. يعني شوف مثلا في السيزون الاخير ذا حق باث اوف اكزايل 1، انا تعمدت اني ابدا السلسلة ببلد مو معروف يعني، ولا بكثير احد يعني، ولا بكثير يعني عليه اقبال من الناس، وكنت انزل عنه ابديت بشكل يومي. اخذت البلد للنهاية يعني، جبت فيه فويد ستون. اوكي ما ذبحت فيه اوبر، اوكي لان البلد ما هو مهيأ اصلا انك انت تشيل فيه اوبر. بس انه يعني وضحنا وشرحنا كيف انت تبني البلد شوي شوي. تعتمد دروبات من هنا، كرافت من هنا. انا صراحة تجربة مثيرة يعني. والله جوز انه بلد اسطوري ايه. توتم حق باث 2 ايه اكيد، والله يبي يجيه نيرف يشقه شق. والله شوف، سالفة انه في احد بيشرح لك كيف تبني بلد من الصفر مستحيل. العملية صدقني ما بسهلة ترى. بس على قولتك مشكلتي اني ما افهم في الاشياء كثير يعني. مثل ايه شفت، هذه هي المشكلة ما هو باللوت. المشكلة يعني انك انت ما تفهم كثير في اللعبة، وهذا سهل انك انت تتعلمه يعني. يبغاله صبر ويبغاله شوية وقت وبتتعلم كل شيء. احنا كلنا ترى بدينا اللعبة وانا ما نعرف. بعرف أنا هم. شوف عشان كذا أنت لو شفت أحد من الفيديوهات حقتي دائما أنا إذا جيت أسوي شرح عن بلد دائما يطلع المقطع طويل، لأني أشرح كل شيء بالتفصيل، أشرح ليش تاخذ هذا ولين أخذت هذا وش يسوي، عرفت، وكيف ترفع الدمج هنا وكيف. لكن أحيانا تجيك بعض الردود يقول لك لا فيديوهاتك طويلة ما أدري إيش، ما عندنا وقت نقعد نشوف فيديو نص ساعة، فما عاد تدري من ترضي. عليكم السلام على عزوز. يلا قربنا. كم الدقة؟ كواليتي 80 بس 1080. يا هلا والله عزوز، موجودين. أنا أبث تقريبا صار لي يمكن شهر أبث كل يوم، يعني يمكن 3 أيام تقريبا اللي ما بثيت فيها، دائما بثوثي نفس هالوقت تقريبا. ما شاء الله على البركة يا عزوز. إيه هبد لاحقنا على اللعب، ضبط أمورك وركز، أبد كل شيء ملحوق عليه. أقصد مثلا زي سرعة اللعب، إيه هم ما يبغون يخلون الجزء الثاني من مثل الجزء الأول، عرفتوا لي الجزء الأول فيه حلول كثيرة لكثير من المشاكل في الجزء الثاني. يلا بسم الله.
I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2, and today I'm excited to show off our new class, the Duelist, which will be available in the 1.0 release on December the 11th. But for those of you who just can't wait until 1.0 later this year, after showing the Duelist, we'll also be showing off a new event based on the Ritual League called the Forbidden Rites, which will be releasing next week along with the 055 update. And after all that, a Q&A with Ziggy D to answer your questions from Twitch chat. But not only that, afterwards we'll be going straight to the final qualifier for the PoE2 races, the winner of which will be going to ExileCon in November to compete in the finals. But first, the Duelist. Now the Duelist comes with a new weapon type that it's kind of crazy we didn't have, swords. And with each new weapon type, we want to make sure that the playstyle feels different to all the others. So what defines combat with a sword? To us, it's that feeling of flow, from attack to attack, and from stance to stance. And what better place to demonstrate the Duelist's abilities than the ruins of the Grand Arena? The corpses of the dead continue to fight endlessly as the arena collapses around them. And should you get to the center, you'll be able to face Thrax, their champion. The first mechanic we need to talk about is Ready Stance. After using some Duelist skills, you can keep holding the button to ready your blades for your next strike. Normally, your basic sword slash would look like this, but in Ready Stance it turns into a deadly AoE slash instead. Your Ready Stance also has the ability to be upgraded. This is Sand Scour, another Ready Stance attack, and if you stun enemies with it, you'll enter Sand Stance, and using this with your default attack will send out a sand disc. But default attack isn't the only ability that can be modified by your stance. Like Perforate, for example. This skill
كذا
is a
زين.
triple stab, where the third strike sends out drills, bleeding your enemies. But from ready stance, you can skip right to the drills. If you use it from sand stance though, it will send out a bunch of mini sand discs from every enemy it hits. Perfect for large packs. Together, these basic abilities give a very unique feel to sword combat. It's quite different than any other class we've made, flowing from ability to ability. There's also some abilities that you can use while in ready stance, without breaking it. A good example are war cries, like this one, Intimidate.
Time to die!
Use it to deliver a cutting insult to your foe, intimidating them and causing your next attack to knock them off balance. Another great ability you can use already is Rending Dash. This movement skill slices through monsters, but since you stay in ready stance, it allows you to reposition to the perfect angle to strike. So far, we've been using sand stance to tackle these enemies. But what about blood stance? For that, we'll need to switch from two-hand to dual wield. Now with swords, we wanted to make sure that the different options of one-hand, two-hand, or dual wield each have their own interesting playstyle. So unlike other weapon types, dual wielding swords gives you the ability to parry attacks. Follow up with Bloody Blade to enter blood stance. When using this one with default attack, you'll create a deadly blood wave, causing your enemies to bleed. And of course, blood stance will also work with other skills that benefit from stances. So use it with Perforate, for example, and you'll get a bunch of mini blood novas. Once your enemies are bleeding, you might want to try out Hemorrhage. This skill creates deadly blood slashes that drastically speed up the bleeding on your enemies. And once the enemies have built up enough blood loss, slice through them with a Rending Dash to consume all the blood loss for a giga bleed.
I was born for this.
Now one skill we couldn't have made the Duelist without is Cyclone. It's an absolute fan favorite, and just like before, when using it, you can spin to win. But this class is all about using stances, so how about we try it with one of those? Use Cyclone from Sand Stance, and you'll be spewing sand discs at your enemies left and right. Great for AoE clear. Now Parry also had a significant upgrade compared to before, and it's a lot more reliable now. But there's also another way to parry monsters that doesn't require waiting for them to attack you. By switching to a shield, you can now bash enemies straight out of ready stance to parry them without waiting for an attack.
لا اوكي ردوا علي صراحة قدموها بشكل حلو.
During the arena's heyday, challengers would first have to face deadly beasts to test their mettle, so why should it be any different now? Before you can face Thrax, you will need to defeat these dangerous adversaries to prove your worth. Another trick the Duelist has up his sleeves are buried blades. Earthrend creates blades that slice through the ground towards your enemies, and once in the ground, these blades have a few uses. The first one of these can be done using Charged Slash. The basic version is a simple lightning-infused cleave, but do it from ready stance, and it changes into a deadly spin, sending out lightning projectiles. But Charged Slash can also be used with the buried blades. Hitting them will turn them into mini Tesla coils, dealing lightning damage to nearby enemies. It seems here we have a warrior who refused to die. I'm sure we could put his equipment to better use.
Just a petty thief.
Quiet. I've no guilt in this.
وراه شلح الرجال.
You could also switch to a two-hander to plunge your blade into the ground, sending out a set of 3 blades that explode. But if you use Earthrend first, then you can get even more blades, and the blade plunge will make all of them explode. If you want an even greater field of blades, using ready stance with Earthrend has an interesting effect. Instead of creating one blade, it makes an entire wall of them. You can also hold the blade plunge skill to charge up the swords even further before they explode. Ooh, watch out for those chimeras. So for maximum damage, use ready stance into Earthrend, charge them up with Charged Slash, and do a held blade plunge for a massive explosion. But that's not all.
هذه منطقة جديدة أبو محمد كأنه قايل إنها اسمها جراند أرينا.
Use it with sand to generate continuous sandstorms around all your blades. And this can be a devastating combo to blend bosses. Or use it with blood to create blood pools around each blade. Cycloning through the blood pools will add blood to your cyclone. So that can
والله ما أدري للحين ما ذكروا إن
While we're
أكت
talking
كم.
about that, Cyclone counts as a storm, so it can pick up other elemental ground effects too. Blade Conduit will summon a bolt of lightning to your blade and create shocking ground, and cycloning through it will add lightning to your cyclone. Combine it with the blood to get both effects. And of course it's possible to get blood, sand, ice, fire, and lightning all at the same time on your cyclone. You guys will have to work out a good build for that yourselves. Already you can see from just the tools I've shown you, this class has a lot of interesting combinations of abilities. With even just a few skills, there are a huge number of options you can do in combat. Now before we get to the boss fight of this area, there's just one more skill I'd like to show you. World Cutter. Charge it up and unleash the ultimate slash.
Whoa.
That's not all. Like so many of the duelist abilities, it can be further enhanced with Blood Stance, or Sand Stance too. Alright, so those are just a few of the tools the duelist has at his disposal. So let's use them to face the true threat, Thrax, the champion of the arena.
Come to Thrax, little one.
Alright, so that's a taste of what we have in store for the duelist.
يا أخي
It's my
الفايت
favorite
أسطوري.
class I've ever worked on, and provides a really dynamic combat experience that's just quite unlike any other ARPG. But we also wanted to show what kind of possibilities there are for the duelist in the endgame. To do that, I'll hand things over to Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts, Game Director on Path of Exile. Today, we're going to go through 2 in-game builds that we've put together for the duelist made by our developers. Our first build is called the Bringer of Blades, a mighty name once feared in the arena. This build is all about rising buried blades from beneath the ground. Some say each sword created by this build is from a foe slain in battle in the gladiator arena, and from the afterlife, they offer their sword back to you in respect. The bread and butter of this build uses Earthrend, supported by the lineage support Calm's Madness, to maximize the efficiency of creating buried blades. It combines that with the Blade Conduit skill, to charge up all the blades with lightning. You can also use the Astral Projector support on it to be able to do so from ranged, if you want to minimize risk and place shock ground underneath your enemies. We also have Earthrend supported by Electrocute, so that we can keep the enemies crowd controlled. Then it's just simple. Spam Earthrend, occasionally using Blade Conduit to refresh the charged lightning on all the blades. For stronger enemies, or larger packs, we want to be able to get Sand Stance. The best way to do that while clearing is using Combat Frenzy. Simple, now you're generating frenzy charges. With those, we can use Sand Scour to enter Sand Stance, and from Sand Stance use Blade Plunge. to cause sand disks to appear on all of our many buried blades, covering the screen in storms of sand. Of course, you want to use eroding sands too, because as the sand disks are doing many small hits, you want to make sure enemies have as little armor as possible for maximum damage. Alongside that, since we're doing lightning damage, we're also going to throw in the new support Sandstorm, which causes our sand disks to become infused with lightning. The other tool we're using is this support, which causes all your buried blades to add miniature auras that give you damage. To double down on that further, we have this new passive skill Notable, which also causes your buried blades to make you angry, causing you to generate rage on hit while near them. With those, we want even more buried blades. So, let's take it to the extreme. And for that, we have this skill, Rain of Steel, which allows you to call down a whole ruckus of swords, covering the entire battlefield in buried blades. It's pretty obvious what to do next. Just use the existing combos, and the entire screen becomes surging with lightning as sand disks run wild. There's more coming even still. Alongside the Duelist, we've made a whole bunch of new epic swords. I mean, just look at them all. This build in particular uses this sword, which causes all your buried blades to be enhanced by Karui magic and become ancestrally boosted. Then, take these new passive skill notables, specifically for boosted attacks, to improve your efficiency even further. There's a few new ways to boost attacks with the Duelist, and we're excited for you to discover and integrate them into your builds. With all that combined, look at this actual mayhem. Now, we tried to not use unique items on this build, as we wanted to show its potential with just standard gear and skills. But this next one is a different story. So, let's move on to our second build. Here we have the Scourge Walker. For this build, we wanted to do Cyclone with a twist. For that, we're going to use some uniques, starting with a new sword being introduced alongside the Duelist, Oro's Sacrifice. This sword grants a ton of fire damage, at the expense of your physical damage, and grants a new skill called Infernal Step. Infernal Step itself is pretty fun, and pretty epic. Use it as you flicker around, burning enemies as you strike them. Be wary though, there are both upsides and downsides to using this skill consecutively. Each use gains you a stack of Sacrificial Flame. While this isn't inherently a downside, using Infernal Step while you have Sacrificial Flame causes you to take fire damage, and the more you have, the more you take. So you want to make sure you mitigate as much fire damage taken as possible. In order to do this, we're using even more uniques, like these, which have received some changes, Molten Tenet and Zoph's Blood. Then we've just gone and used good armor gear in our core armor slots to stack up as much defense as possible.
وش الجول اللي في السلاح تشوفونها؟
We're doing a few things here that are pretty out there. Given we're using Oro's Sacrifice, we're dealing purely fire damage. However, we still need to be able to bleed for some huge DPS you'll see soon. To do that, we're using this unique ring, Blistering Bond. This allows our fire damage to scale bleeding, instead of physical damage. Our last unique is Barracks Respite. As said originally, we want a Cyclone, which is a wind skill, and can benefit from elemental ground surfaces. Now, our Cyclone is a fiery vortex. One last thing to note before showcasing our Scourge Walker in action is that Oro's Sacrifice also grants you frenzy charges while at maximum Sacrificial Flame. This will allow us to fold Bloodied Blade into our rotation between Cyclone sessions to get Blood Enhanced Cyclone. Alright, now you can see our basic rotation. First, we use Infernal Step a few times. Then, once we have a frenzy charge, we use Bloodied Blade. This puts us in blood stance. And then it's simple, Cyclone away. As you can see, we have the perfect harmony of demonic powers. Blood and fire fill the screen. Honestly though, we need to add some horror and flesh to the build to really embrace the fantasy. For that, let's use this new support gem, which we will put on our Cyclone. Given we're already bleeding, this can cause enemies to shed chunks of flesh when hit, which explode after a short delay. Check out this ruckus. Oh, and while we're at it, let's add even more fire by using the Fan the Flame support. At this point, you can already see how much this is getting out of control. I love it. You may notice we have an excess of frenzy charges. So, you want to throw on Echoing Strikes, which consumes all your frenzy charges to cause our next cyclone to create a bunch of cyclones. Feel free to add Infernal Cry to the mix, cause why not? Okay, well it's already pretty damn strong, but we can push it further. What about single target? For that, we're going to make use of our second weapon set, and use a one-hand sword and Targe, which grants parry. However, instead of using a regular Targe, we're going to use this Runeforged Targe, which grants us a special version of parry that maintains its stances when used. So if you are in blood stance and use it, you will remain in blood stance afterwards. This includes while using the dashing parry that Jonathan mentioned earlier. We are going to want our parry debuff duration to be as long as possible, so we can spend more time spinning. To get that, we're using another new sword base type. This one adds base duration to parry. We've also then invested into as much parry duration in this weapon set as possible on new passives on the tree. Now, we can make this even better by using a new support that allows our parry to apply Armor Break. And to get it to benefit from our fire damage, we will anoint the Molten One's gift on our amulet. Now, our Armor Break causes enemies to take extra fire damage. So now, we just get into blood stance using Bloodied Blade, use parry, which dashes in, keeping us in blood stance, then we cyclone our way to glory. Don't forget to also use Echoing Strikes once you get enough frenzy charges. I mean, just look at this damage. You may have noticed we didn't show any Ascendancy classes. That's right, these builds weren't even Ascended, so their build potential goes so much higher. And the Ascendancies are pretty epic. Here's some art to tease them. But to find out more about that, you'll have to check them out when we show them at ExileCon later this year. We hope you enjoyed our Duelist demonstration. We're really excited to have you get your hands on it and start slicing and dicing throughout Rayclast. Now, Path of Exile 2's full 1.0 launch is later this year on December 11th. But if you just can't wait till then, next week we are doing our 055 update, and it includes a bunch of changes as well as a new event. Given that, it's finally time to talk about Forbidden Rites, a new event based on the Ritual League that will be starting with our 055 patch next
Trial
week.
of Chaos reward.
But that's not all. We also have a massive overhaul to the Trial of Chaos, some new in-game Abyss content, and more. So, let's dive straight into it. The King in the Mists and his cultists, left unchecked, have spread their influence. By his will, the Nameless have been performing gruesome rituals throughout Rayclast, all the way from the forests of Ogham to the deserts of the Maraketh, and even Utsal and the Karui Islands, afflicting everything around them with a foreboding darkness. As you can see, they've been quite successful in their efforts, and if not stopped soon, who knows what will become of Rayclast. During the Forbidden Rites event, your goal is to put an end to their nefarious plans. In each area of the campaign, you'll find a ritual encounter. For those unfamiliar, these are effigies that are guarded by the Nameless and their servants. By defeating them within the ritual site, you can then activate the effigy and fight them again as they are revived by dark magic, all whilst various plagues will try to kill you. Defeating the revived monsters causes their blood to go to the effigy
موسم
to be
ايفنت
used as tribute.
شوف قاعد يتكلم عنها الحين.
After the encounter, use the tribute you earned to acquire rewards. These rituals, unlike their in-game counterparts, will not exclusively reward unique items, and instead will give you a bunch of items useful for leveling, like currency for crafting your gear alongside a bunch of equipment. Ultimately, in every area, you get to kill some monsters and then go on a small shopping spree. However, we know people liked having unique item rewards from Ritual, and we wanted that to still be present in the campaign, but we just couldn't give one out in every single area. Throughout each act, 2 times, and once in each interlude part, you'll see these clusters of more epic ritual effigies on the world map. When you reach these areas, you'll notice that unlike normal, the effigies aren't just in a random location in the area, but they're on top of the area's boss fight. By completing these boss rituals, the boss will then be carried forward and added to the next ritual in the cluster in the next area, where you'll face it as part of an increasingly dangerous series of boss waves. For example, the first cluster you'll encounter is shown here, containing large effigies in Clearfell, Mudburrow, the Grellwood, and the Grim Tangle. If you complete the ritual in Clearfell, the Hag boss will appear during the ritual in the Mudburrow, alongside the Devourer. Once you've completed that area, the ritual in the Grellwood will include Brambleghast, alongside the Hag and the Devourer.
والله ان شاء الله بنحاول نشرح قد ما نقدر، ولا ان شاء الله يمكن انزل موضوع بكره نشرح فيه ان شاء الله ابرز الاشياء اللي موجوده في التحديث.
Then, to top it off, when you get to Grim Tangle, the ritual in that area will have its boss, the Rotten
بس هو
Druid,
الحين قاعد يتكلم عن
and the
الايفنت.
previous 3,
الايفنت
totaling
بيكون
4
يتمحور
boss
حول
fights and
الريتشوال.
one epic final showdown. That's where the unique rewards come into play. By completing these epic boss ritual encounters, you then get to spend your tribute on unique items. Given ritual is the content of the league, we wanted to make sure it worked in multiplayer well. Historically, only the creator of the area gets to spend tribute at the end, while your friends just have to watch. We've made some improvements to this experience. In 055, every party member earns their own tribute and can spend it on their own rewards, so no one has to miss out. In order to make it not too rewarding in groups, we've restricted it so party members are unable to reroll the shop and they have fewer options available to choose from. So that's the campaign and a multiplayer improvement, but what about the endgame? Given that ritual was already available to be added to your maps, well, once you reach the endgame, you'll still have ritual encounters in every area, and they'll still give unique items and omens, but we've added one extra mechanic here to add new difficulty and reward heights to your in-game maps. After completing rituals in endgame, you want to keep an eye out for this item, a Sacred Bloom, which you can spend tribute on to acquire.
سكرت بلوم هذا حق
If you
هارفست
happen
من
to
باث
find
اكزايل 1.
one, you can then use it and apply an entrance to the Wildwood to an in-game map of your choice on the Atlas. Then, when you enter that map, you'll find this entrance at the start of the area. By entering it, you're sent into the Wildwood. You have limited time here, but while in the Wildwood you can find wisps, and you want to follow the trails of them and collect as many as possible. There are 3 different types of wisps:
هذه برضو من افليكشن
Primal,
الليك حق باث اوف اكزايل 1.
and Wild. When you then have to exit the Wildwood, the wisps are freed and will spread across the map, possessing and influencing many monsters. Primal wisps, when freed, can cause normal monsters to become magic monsters. Vivid wisps, when freed, can add additional modifiers to rare monsters. And wild wisps add rarity of items dropped to all monsters. If you're really lucky, keep an eye out for these sacred wisps. I wonder what they do. Of course, you can gather all 3 types of wisps if you really want to juice your maps. And by using ritual tablets, you can increase the amount of wisps found while in the Wildwood. Be warned though, while
وابوك
affected
الجوس اللي
monsters
بيصير
drop
على
better
المابات.
items, the wisps also empower them, making them considerably more difficult to defeat.
والله يا فبقن بيقعد اسبوعين مواصل.
That's the Forbidden Rites event. While it isn't a full league in the traditional sense, it gives you the perfect opportunity to start in a fresh economy. For those of you who enjoy having clear goals to work towards, this event league also introduces a new set of 8 challenges. These include completing the campaign rituals, defeating named rare monsters, reaching level 90, and more. Completing them will earn you 4 exclusive cosmetic rewards and a statue for your hideout to commemorate your success. Swarm your enemies with the Locust Footprints effect, and send your foes scurrying to their demise with the Locust Swarm Finisher effect. Fear the dark no longer with your Wildwood Guardian pet at your side, and level up in fashion with the Wildwood Affliction level up effect. Next, let's talk about the Trial of Chaos.
ايوه.
Since early access launched, we've
عطنا
received a
Trial
lot
Master.
of feedback about the Trial of Chaos. It was just obvious that it wasn't good enough. So we've gone through pretty much every part of this trial and made improvements across the board. There's so much to cover here, so let's just fire away with some of the more important changes. Starting with a banger, you can now leave the Trial of Chaos between rooms and resume later at your leisure.
اوكي.
Alongside improving almost every aspect of the encounter types, we've made far more of the rooms just about slaying all the enemies, instead of the more specific objectives like escorting the statue or implanting soul cores. We've increased the size of that pesky elevator and made them more responsive. We've made the doors between rooms open quicker and from further away. We've shortened the distance between rooms to have less running.
اخيرا.
We've added a lot more inherent scaling to the area and to the Trial of Sekimas too, to account for the lack of Atlas Tree. We've made the Trial Master only time freeze to spawn in all the monsters once at the start of the run, instead of in many of the rooms. On top of that, we have done a full pass on all the modifiers, making them significantly less dangerous at lower tiers, and rising to the same difficulty at their maximum tier. Additionally, all the modifiers now grant bonuses to item rarity too. The modifiers now also have better descriptions, being more explicit about what danger you're signing up for. We've also added a new kind of modifier, called a wager modifier. These are meta mods that can significantly increase the danger and reward of your trial. For example, this one increases the tier of every modifier already applied to your run, but in exchange for that, doubles all the currency you've earned so far in the run. There's about a dozen of these, and they have some pretty interesting effects. Sometimes you want to apply them early in the run, other times late. They add a very cool dynamic element to the mod selection between rooms. The Uxmal the Beast Lord boss fight in the Trial of Chaos has had its arena redesigned entirely. Less flying, more attacking. The more significant elite monsters that spawn during the Trial of Chaos are now more dangerous, but more rewarding. Speaking of rewards, you can now also find these chests between each room to get some bonus items for your efforts. And the rewards available when choosing modifiers no longer offer random corrupted items, now exclusively offering only currency items and soul cores. Oh, and we've done a full balance pass on those too, to make them more powerful, alongside adding some new ones to the trial and endgame. Speaking of the trial and endgame, for those looking for a greater challenge, you'll no longer need to have to stop after 10 rooms. You can now continue all the way to room 30, with the difficulty and rewards escalating as you progress. Combined with the previously mentioned wager modifiers, the rewards of these runs can get very, very juicy. Reaching these later rooms will also allow you to obtain all 3 Trial Master fragments in a single run, giving skilled players a clear and reliable path towards facing the Trial Master rather than leaving their progress entirely to chance. We've moved the functionality of the wager currency mechanic from magic inscribed ultimatums that could drop from the Trial Master into the base mechanic. This can be accessed at the end of every 10th room. Overall, this is a much more polished version of the Trial of Chaos, and we think it addresses many of the concerns players have raised over the past several months. When we introduced the new endgame in Return of the Ancients, we wanted the journey through the fortress to feel epic, and it was. But your first time progressing through it, it is a massive undertaking. With a fresh economy, we wanted to make the fortress easier to complete, so in 055, we're making some changes. After completing the main questline, you can now just venture out of the fortress and find another Arbiter of Divinity key. By defeating this more difficult version of the boss, all remaining sections of the fortress will be automatically completed.
أخيرا. حلوة.
Now, onwards to Abyss. We're introducing a new Atlas feature centered around it. We wanted to add more things to find when exploring the Infinite Atlas, so we've added these new abyssal ravines that can appear. Each map on the ravines has abysses in it, and as you complete each along it, the next map gets more and more rewarding as you push the Abyssal Legion back. When you reach the last map on the ravine, you'll have a guaranteed abyssal boss encounter. The Forbidden Rites event will not have Runes of Aldo content in each area. But fret not. Pharaoh, Danig, and Expedition content is still going to be available in the Atlas as core, and that includes standard leagues. You can now continue to find expeditions in-game, but from Act 4 onwards. In the endgame, expedition tablets will now be available, allowing for some new levels of investment into the league. Such as having 2 full expeditions in just one area, alongside up to 2 standalone Remnant encounters. With tablet mods, you can now even get many sentries per expedition, resembling an almost sentry minion build as you run around and apply runic modifiers to monsters across the maps. The existing Runes of Aldo League will continue to run, so if you want to keep playing there, finishing your endgame and completing challenges, feel free to do so. So that's all our new content summarized for this Event League and 055 update. In case you didn't see it alongside Path of Exile 1's release for Curse of the Allflame, here's a reminder to check out our supporter packs and mystery box that release with it, which are now fully available for use in Path of Exile 2 as well. These include the Plague and Remedis supporter packs, and the Curse of the Allflame mystery box, with some epic items including armor sets, weapon skins, weapon effects, map devices, hideouts, a new tracking scroll, some otters, and much more. If you would like to purchase the Curse of the Allflame mystery box, it's available now through the in-game shop and Path of Exile 2 website. For more information, head to pathofexile2.com/mystery box for all the details. We'll also be releasing some cool new armor sets and skill effects alongside this release. Check these out. If you're interested, keep an eye out on the store with the new release. Thanks for your support. Now, we had originally thought we were going to deploy a much larger balance pass in this patch, but unfortunately, with all the other work going on for our 1.0 release, we were not able to get these changes ready in time. It's been a lot more work than we expected, so rather than deploy something substandard, we decided it would be better to take our time with the balance changes and just release the Event League anyway. All those balance changes that were slated for 055 will now be happening in 1.0 instead. The full release patch is shaping up to be a huge one, and if you haven't done so yet, you can acquire exclusive milestone rewards just by signing up at pathofexile2.com for the 1.0 full release. Also, we hope you join us for ExileCon on November 7th New Zealand time to see what else we've been cooking up. But in the meantime, we hope you enjoy the Forbidden Rites event, which starts at the end of next week. See you in Rayclast. We're just about to start the Q&A with Ziggy D, so get your questions ready.
ايش رايكم يا شباب؟ يعني معناته ما في بالانس تشينج ولا في اي شيء. يعني البلدات اللي كانت شغالة في الليج برضو بتشتغل في الايفنت بشكل جيد. يعني شكلي بلعب نفس آخر بلد لعبته ذا الفروست بولت.
At Gamescom, and we've got Mark in New Zealand, so we're all over the place this time, coming at you remotely for some Q&A to talk about what we saw with the Duelist today, the 0.55 event update, and various other questions that you might have in a bit of a mini Q&A session. Thanks for joining us from all over the place, folks. Jonathan, you're at Gamescom at the moment, where some lucky folks are able to actually play the Duelist. How's it been going?
Absolutely. So
Yeah, it's honestly been great. It's really good to see players just being able to play and
يوم
experience the game.
الجمعة
It's always
الجاية إن شاء
fun.
الله
But
بيبدأ.
my voice is actually a bit screwed right now because I've been kind of yelling over the loudness of the Gamescom. Trying to explain complicated duelist mechanics.
إيه
In
ترايل اوف
yelling
كيس
form,
والله
so
يا
my
أخي
voice
حلوة
is a bit
صراحة.
messed up.
حلوة.
So hopefully you guys can forgive that. But yeah, it's always fun talking to to players and journalists and seeing what they think.
Yeah, have you been able to get some like good kind of in-person feedback there, since you're right there with people as they're playing?
Yeah,
the
for
class
sure,
for the first time?
absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's great. We've also got Kevin, who's been one of the designers, working on the Duelist as well. He's been able to get direct feedback, talk to players as well. It's been really good.
Awesome. And Mark, you're over in New Zealand where you were just working on the endgame builds that you showcased in that video there, which were pretty spicy. How are things going over there in the studio?
Well, I'm at home right now, but it's been pretty hectic. Just putting it always is for these deadlines, just pulling everything together. But yeah, these in-game builds we just had to put together in the last, honestly, it felt like the last week. Really, is when I was like, okay, we've got to theory craft some epic shit. Let's put it together, and came up with. I said made by developers. Technically, that is true, but I kind of theory crafted both of them, and was like, let's get cranking. And they both seemed pretty fun. I mean, they were definitely fun.
إيه يا
to play,
شباب
but they're not fun to watch,
الدروبس
but,
لا تنسون تاخذونها.
there's a lot more as well.
نشوف
there's like,
تفعلت ولا لا.
good dozen builds I had in mind, and I was like, oh, we were going to go with them, and we're going down a whole bunch of different paths, and it just kind of ended up. I was like,
والله
I wanna do
شكلها
something,
مقلتشة.
something traditional that uses a bunch of swords, and something demonic because why not? So it was quite interesting that I ultimately just got to pick a fantasy and then make it happen. But of course, the difference between me making builds and players making builds is you have to make a build with what works, whereas I make the build and then I'm like, go and make it happen, development team. Thank you. So
Change the balance until it works, basically.
yeah.
Make this a thing. Well, you certainly have a lot to work there with the Duelist. There is a lot going on there. I know, Jonathan, you personally were just telling me earlier that you're like very excited for the Duelist in particular, and that it's the most fun that you've had with the game so far, or something to that effect. What is it
Absolutely.
like that you love about it?
I really love this class. Like, I really love melee combat in games. Like, it's something that I really enjoy. And this one really, honestly, I would say finally kind of delivers something that I would say is like peak melee in an ARPG. Like, I honestly really love it. But also just there's so many intricacies to the skill design in this class that's really interesting. Like, I don't think we've ever sort of woven so many different ways to kind of do mechanics with all the different with all the different skills.
إيه لا
Every
حتى
skill
عندي
is
أنا
like designed
تويتش ما
to
أدري
build more
أحس إنه
skills and
مقلتش ما أدري
intricacies
إيش
with all
جاه.
the different
إيه
different
تويتش
use them.
بس.
But at the same time, it's like it's all quite diegetic, by which I mean like you kind of like there's metal in the ground, you electrify it, now it's like zapping things and things like it's all kind of obvious in some ways, but
متذكر يا
also kind
كافي.
of complicated too because there's just so many ways you can use everything.
There's a ton of nuance to it, but even so, I had a chance to play it last time I was visiting, like a couple months back, and there's some sort of intuitiveness to how the skills end up working.
أصلا شوفهم
together,
مقلتش
where
حتى شوف
you can
هنا
almost
جوش
play around
طالع
reading some of
الشعار.
those descriptions, I think, which is good because there's a lot of descriptions you did have to write for those, given the
It's kind of
complexity of it.
it's actually kind of interesting in the studio because the people who are more I guess stat focused are actually the ones that feel the class is more complicated and the ones who just like take it as they see it. Because if you look at the number of stat sets, it is kind of crazy because you'll have like it's like you've got a buried blade explosion, and then you've got to be like okay, then buried blade when it's got electricity, and then buried blade explosion with with electricity, right? Or versus just the electrical hits, and it just ends up being like half a dozen stat sets on every skill that you, which is what we call the different tabs that you see on the skill gem. So yeah, if your first experience of the game is like looking at the skill gem hovers and like looking at every single stat set, then you're not necessarily in for as good of a time as if you just like try out the skill and see what it does. I guess that's sort of quite different than what a lot of our skills have been like in the past. But I honestly really love it just because there's so many interesting ways to use the skills.
With this, just having such an extensive set of like skill interactions compared to anything you've had so far, how challenging is designing this one and getting it to work and be playable in that way, being, say, compared to the Huntress and the Druid?
Well, I'll tell you what, this is one of the hardest classes to design, and a lot of it was like, okay, swords are pretty much the most generic weapon ever, right? And you ask like 10 different people what a sword does, and they'll give you 10 different answers. Like there are certain fantasies, and we kind of had to make sure we were delivering like pretty much anyone's fantasy of a sword, and there's like quite a few different ones, right? So you have to go through. But I think the kind of like thing that ties it all together is that to me, swords are about like the kind of that flow feeling. That's what I kind of
يعني الحين على اللي شفناه
That's where the whole sort of ready stance thing kind of came from.
على اللي شفناه ان الدولست جاهز، لان الجماعه مو بس قاعدين يستعرضون لك جيم بلاي الدولست والسورد، لا بالعكس قاعدين يسوون بلدات عليها، معناته الكلاس جاهز 100%.
PoE1 we've got this blood and sand theme. What if we actually took that and like effectively used that theme on top of some of the mechanics we were designing, and then it all kind of really rapidly came together after that. Like we suddenly realized like, yeah, this is sort of the feel, like the theme of like physical stuff that we can go with for the duelist, and it ended up working really well. So I'm really happy with the way that ended up.
Yeah, the stance thing in particular, I remember when I was trying it, like, and you're talking about flow and how important that was. And I remember I was having an issue
لأن الصدق الموضوع طبعا أكيد إنه صعب. سالفة إنك أنت تضيف كلاس اللعبة ترى مو شيء مو بسهل.
But I noticed that that's something that you've solved in the new iterations. You've got this way that you can carry through now.
Yeah, so since you played that, we added the idea that there are some.
لا ما أدري، أنا حتى أنا عندي أصلا ما أدري إيش فيه، مقلتش من سالفة أهله. تويتش ما أدري إيش فيه، تحس إنه ضرب.
Without breaking ready stance, sort of allows for that repositioning that you can do, and it honestly speeds up quite a lot what you can do. I didn't use it that much in the demo that I was showing, but for actual like practical play, I highly recommend using it because you know, if you're someone who likes to zoom around, then using that skill can really add quite a lot to what you're doing.
I think people are probably a little bit confused in general about like the ready stance and the blood and sand as well. So how do those just
شوف أنا كيف طلع عندي.
Yeah. So fundamentally what you've got here is that there are two different
ما في أي شيء أصلا.
ready stance skills. One of them kind of moves backwards as more defensive, and that's the sand one. If you stun a monster with that, then it's going to put you in sand stance. The other one is moving forward, more aggressive, and that one, if you hit a parried monster, it's going to put you in blood stance. So if you're into the sort of parry gameplay early on, then blood is the one for you. If you're more into, you know, if you're not into that, then using the sand one is like more your style. Then you can go that way. But all of it is bypassable with frenzy charges as well. So one of the questions that we often get is like, oh, you know, what if I don't want to parry? What if I don't want to do the stun stuff? And frenzy charges effectively act as your bypass. So as Mark showed in one of those builds there, yeah, combat frenzy is like a good way to be able to kind of like, you know, get those stances without that. But there's even other ways as well. So there's also support gems that allow you to get blood and sand without having to even do either of those skills as well.
لا وش دعوة سحبوا عليك. لا المشكلة في تويتش، اصبر لين يضبط تويتش.
One sand stance unique and one blood stance unique right now that weren't shown.
And then there's also the thing of getting blood on the ground as a way to get blood on things like Cyclone. I actually didn't realize this was going to happen, but in one of my demos, I had one of those vampire monsters from Act 1, and it's like use one of those blood pools on the ground, and that actually triggered the blood. And I had no idea that we actually had done that even. Like I didn't realize that those blood pools technically were the same mechanic. So yeah, you can like get blood-coated Cyclone from just playing against one of those vampire monsters.
جوناثان صوته رايح، شكله عاطب من والديها.
So like some people, I think, especially people who maybe just played a little bit of parry when Huntress first came out, and obviously since then it's changed quite a bit. But about parry, some people are definitely worried about parry. Like they see that as like a negative for a class to be focused on that because of the bad experience they might have had with it or something. So how has parry changed or been improved here, and also how like mandatory is it for the duelist playstyle there?
Well, certainly we didn't want it to be mandatory because that was one of those things we did with the Huntress where parry was really important for that class initially, and we wanted to make sure that it wasn't here. That being said, it is a duelist. I want parry to be a thing for it. So like, you know, we did want at least one of the archetypes to involve that. But at the same time, one of the big issues that we've had with parry, kind of two things really, like it just comes down to unreliability. So there's a new change that we've just implemented for parry, which was actually quite complicated to do. And it's a little bit complicated to explain as well. But effectively what we've done is we've made it so that when you're parrying, your character is effectively enlarged for against skills that are parryable. So that means that you'd kind of have this problem before where you'd feel like you would try to parry something and it looked like the monster would kind of hit you, but it just didn't. And that was happening all the time, and like one of the frustrating things about parry. So what we've done is now that we've made this change, it means that monsters hit you much more reliably when you're parrying. And so it just makes the whole thing a lot better.
لا شوف علي عادي، شوف شخصية عادي. يعني شوف الحين ترى كل اللي قدموه وشفناه احنا، شفت كل اللي قدموه وشفناه احنا بدون اسيدنسي، عرفت؟ وفي باث اوف اكزايل سواء 1 ولا 2 السلاح ما يكون حصري لشخصية معينة، لا تقدر تستخدم سلاح مع أي شخصية ثانية.
in any context right there. So both of those changes together really do improve the feel quite a lot compared to what we had before. And honestly, like, I mean, I love to parry personally, but as I said, even with that said, we know it's not for everyone, so we wanted to make sure there's other options too.
Yeah, that shield, the Buckler shield bash parry was super satisfying when I was messing around with that. So
it is one of those things that's so hard to explain to
ايه ولاحظ ارجع اقول لك انهم لاعبين بدون اسيدنسي، فاحنا ما ندري وش الاسيدنسي وش النودز اللي فيها. طبعا هم حطوا لك ثنتين وقالوا لك بيكشفون عنها في اكزايل الكون يعني في شهر 11، بس واضح من الثنتين عفوا ان اللي على اليمين انه شامبيون، لانه نفس ستايل اللي في الشامبيون حق باث اوف اكزايل 1. اللي على اليسار واضح انه سلاير، يعني من الشكل ومن التصميم، بس عاد ما ندري، يمكن عاد توقعاتنا تصير كلها في جدار.
We have a new reservation skill called codenamed Arcane Parry right now, which is effectively it charges up, and then when you parry, it does a much more significant shockwave comes out of you, just to like allow for a lot more area of effect coverage.
And that means that all those monsters get parried as well, by the way. So the point of this is to effectively make so that, like, we had this thing before where there was a period there where parry was like, you had a really, really huge range. And it was good for endgame, and but we didn't really like that it was so non-physical. So by adding like this kind of like effect to it and actually making it into a mechanic that you can do with a spirit reservation, now it becomes a thing that we can much more readily accept, and it is a good way to actually make parry viable in endgame as well.
والله تويتش شكله ضرب.
That parry fix where you're enlarged, is that in 0.55 or is that a 1.0 alongside Duelist change?
It's probably in 1.0, I would imagine.
1.0.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
لا اللي يتكلم عنها هذه يقول لك لا هذه ريزرفيشن سكيل شيء إضافي.
Coming, which causes your war cries to parry enemies.
What?
And then in the full radius.
لا تحديث يوم الجمعة القادم إن شاء الله.
We're currently trying. We're hoping we can get this, but just so that if people want to play two-handed sword and want to still engage with it, we're trying a two-handed sword base type that grants parry, and you can parry with that. So that'll be a very specific base type.
I'm excited about that.
Base type.
وعليكم السلام. هل تتوقع يحل المشكلات؟ شوف المشكلات ذي اللي تتكلم عنها حلوها. أنا نزلت موضوع في القناة عنها أو فيديو، حلوا كثير من المشاكل اللي تتكلم عنها ذي. المهم ما راح نعيد من الأول في التحديث الجاي، إلا راح تعيد من الأول. إذا أنت حاب تلعب الإيفنت هذا الجديد اللي يبدأ يوم الجمعة، تبدأ من الصفر كأنك أول مرة تلعب اللعبة.
You know, it's fine.
It's fine.
I was going to ask about the animations actually, because these are definitely some of the cooler animations that we've seen so far, and also just in general, like some of the coolest sword animations.
شوفوا على فكرة النقطة هذه سالفة مارك شكله يشرب فهمته. على فكرة سالفة إنه نبدأ من جديد وكذا، خلاص هذه لازم أنت تتعود عليها. في كل ليج بيكون نفس الشيء. الألعاب اللي مثل هذه اللي هي أكشن RPG كلها تعتمد النظام هذا، وبالعكس ترى شيء ممتع انك انت تبدا من الصفر وتبدا تلفل وكذا. طيب سؤال كذا، هذه وش وضعها بعد ما يخلص الليج اللي انت تلعب فيه تروح للستاندر؟ يعني ما يضيع عليك شيء اذا انت بعدين تبغى تلعب في الستاندر بس ما حد يلعب. أنا ألعب اللعبة من فترة طويلة ما عمري لعبت ستاندر. أوكي أنا ممكن ألعب ستاندر بس في الفترة اللي تكون ما بين نهاية ليج وبداية ليج جديد، في فترة يمكن 4 أيام 5 أيام ألعب فيها ستاندر، أصير مثلا أحاول أتدرب على الشخصية الجديدة اللي أبغى أبدأ فيها الليج الجديد، وهكذا. نفس نظام ديابلو تقريبا، ديابلو وغيرها، ترى كل الألعاب اللي زي كذا نفس الشيء. لا ما في شيء يروح عليك، كل شيء موجود، بس مثل ما قلت لك تنتقل للستاندرد.
About swords. for for certain things. Like as I said before, like everyone's got different fantasies about what being a swordsman means, and the sort of anime sword thing is definitely
والله
one
يا
of
علي
those.
شوف
So
اذا انت
you kind
مثلي
of had to.
ما تلعب ستاندر فما عاد تفرق معك تروح لستاندر ولا لا، خلاص لين خلص الليج ما عاد اهم شيء.
In the video really, but we actually have some new tech now where all
رجعت
the
خلنا
monsters are capable
نشوف.
of being sliced into pieces. So it actually works like all the monsters are being like split up, and then we can. It's actually a mechanic. You know what? Actually, one of the in-game builds had it, didn't it? Where you slice monsters up, and then we've even got mechanics to take advantage of that, like the one that makes so that some of the chunks explode after they get sliced up.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's an
اه
actual
والله
thing.
للحين
We kind of
عندي
originally
مضروب
did it just
انا.
as a visual cool thing, but we turned an actual game mechanic as well now, so that's kind of interesting too.
I had the meat chunks on bleed. I think we were calling them meat
Yeah.
chunks internally.
Yeah.
Meat chunks on bleed, but I didn't have the meat
هلا
chunks
حياك
on
الله
slice and
هاني.
dice or whatever we're calling it.
Right, okay, you didn't know that.
No, with that's
طيب انا اقصد يعني نزلت شخصيه جديده ما ينفع استخدم الدروبز. تنفع اذا انت بتلعب ستاندرد، عرفت؟ لكن اذا نزلت اللعبه بالاصدار الرسمي اتوقع انه بيكون فيها ليج مصاحب معها. فانت اذا كنت بتبدا الليج، لانه اذا كان فيه ليج ترى انت تتكلم عن 99.9 من 10 من العالم بيلعبون الليج، لان الناس تحب تبدا بدايه دائما جديده. هل خلص ستريمي؟ ستريم حقهم خلص، الحين في هذه جلسه حواريه.
Mostly because, like, you can see the fluidity, sort of, but you don't really know how it feels. So, I mean, honestly, one of the reasons why we're so keen to demonstrate it at Gamescom, so a bunch of people can get their hands on it. Yeah, honestly, it's just been really good. Like, a lot of people really enjoyed it. So I think I think I was a little bit worried, right? Because like I was worried, like, will people understand?
يوم الجمعه الجاي ان شاء الله هاني.
And we were so worried about it. We're like, okay, we need to have some like
تويت
signs
شكله
up at 6
خبطي والله
ready
تويت
starts.
شكله
Make sure
انضرب.
this tutorial and this Gamescom build that we've got for this just
راح فيها.
works. And if all else fails, we've got Kevin who can just walk around and tell people if they're not doing it. That's the just like really certain that everyone understands the mechanic. But yeah, like honestly, once you feel it, once you feel the flow, it totally makes sense. And honestly, even like some of the design meetings I'll have, I'm just like sitting there, just like doing ready stance attacks. I'm like, oh, like I'll sometimes just like lose track of time just sitting there like doing it. It's just so fun to actually do. Yeah, I really enjoy that part.
So those endgame builds look very spicy. I know a fear was that like some people would feel that swords were too weak or too slow because you were showing just that early campaign side of things.
Yeah.
But if anything, after seeing like those endgame builds, I'm wondering like almost the opposite. Is like, is there a risk here that like the endgame power level of players has just become so high that opportunities to enjoy
صناديقنا راحت. لا ان شاء الله بضايع موجوده. تويتش على الكل حتى حقين جي تي اي. ايه هم حقين جي تي اي هم اللي خلوه يخبط. تلقاهم متجمعين الحين ضرب السيرفرات.
You know, all those things you saw are like the current balance, but maybe Mark, you've got some more theories about that.
Those builds when they were getting filmed, I was like, they're just too strong. They're too strong. And I think even Jonathan, you had some feedback. You're like, just make them a little bit weaker. Like you don't need to one hit literally everything. And I was like, we're already filming these in tier 25 map equivalents with like
yeah, I know. There was a problem at one point like that.
Unassembly. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? But yeah, they're just there's some obviously though with like putting together a class for demonstration purposes for like a convention and to put together these builds. Like obviously we still have some more work to do with respect to that balance kind of side of things, but it's definitely very powerful right now. Some of that dust has to calm down, but that's okay. You know, we'll get there. These things take a lot of time to iterate on, and of course we have till December 11th to do that, so I'm not concerned about the amount of time. In fact, we've never had a class this ready with this much time, so that's a good thing. But yeah, it means we can make even more builds, get even more ready, have the balance be ideally in the best spot. Hopefully players will agree, but we'll see. But yeah, definitely I would say right now it is too OP for sure. Like it's I mean I've played through the campaign a whole bunch of times on it, and I'm just like, you know, I shouldn't be this powerful. Like comparatively with everything else. Like I get that people at Gamescom might not have the same kind of,
because like that's you're starting in Act 5. You're on a pre-made character. What is the gear even like? It's like not necessarily optimized and all of that. So people there are probably going to have a different experience.
شوف يتكلم عن
what you
Act
see is
5
very strong.
يعني قال إنه في Act 5
That is filmed in. I understand tier 25 map. What does that mean? We have obviously we can just set the levels of any area. That is a tier 25 map equivalent of filming for those in-game builds.
طالما باقي أسبوع بكنسل شخصيتي الجديدة. لا عادي، شوف تبدأ الحين تبدأ كذا تسوي براكتس على الشخصية اللي بتلعب فيها الإيفنت. شوف أفضل طريقة تلفيل وش جوناثان أعطاه النظرة هي اللي كنا يقول لا تكب العشاء.
See all those points that people are like, oh, people keep missing this detail as you're going around and being like, oh, you can do that. You'll get to kind of learn where those pain points potentially are. Mark, I noticed a bejeweled implicit on Oro's sacrifice. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, okay. I've mentioned a few cool base types. So we just to clarify, there was the two-handed sword with ready stance.
تكلم عن شيء المفروض ما يقوله. لا هم قايلينه ترى في ستريم حقهم. متكلمين عن المنطقة اسمها جراند أرينا.
And honestly, I want to then propagate it to every other weapon type, to be honest. So we've got, just to clarify,
لا تخاف الصناديق موجودة في الحفظ والصون. المشكلة مو هم منهم، المشكلة من تويتش.
Parry duration one-handed sword. What was the other one we showed? Two-handed.
خلاص رجع يمديك الحين تروح تاخذ الصندوق.
Ancestrally boosted that we showed in that video. And then Oro's sacrifice has bejeweled, which is the base type property of the Twilight longsword, I believe it's called. And that item comes with a dual socket instead of regular sockets. So it's not necessarily better, but it's sort of interesting, and it's trying to just create a bunch of different things with all the different base types where, that whole suite of them that will drop at end game.
الله رجع بس شكله لنا الحين.
You probably get like 5 base types at end game, maybe 6. Pretty much the entire sword line will have a end game counterpart with all the implicits. Just because we've put a lot of stuff there, and you do still have your traditional. Here's the one that's high attack speed. Here's the one that's got here's the one that's just the bomb damage and all that. But then all the others we've tried to make sure have really special implicits, and that includes the base type of Oro sacrifice. So yeah, hopefully people enjoy it and think it's cool. But I definitely was pretty excited about it, and honestly, I find now the base type itself like has some build enabling properties, which I would say hasn't really happened before. So I'm excited to see.
نعم والله انك صادق.
What sword do I want to use?
اي تعبان من المعرض مساكين تلقاه مجهد.
I'm pretty happy with it.
يلعب علينا هاجوس خذ الصندوق وقال لا ما اخذته والله ما قدرت اخذه يطلع لي ايرور.
Love it. Let's talk about what's coming up in the nearer future for people to get their hands on with. But first, you did mention that you were hoping originally to get a big balance pass in 0.55 in the lead up to launch, but now that's the bulk of that at least is being pushed until launch. Is there some stuff that you feel like you really want to get in before then, though? Is there anything that you do want to get into 0.55 potentially?
Well, want to and realistically possible are the two things that are at clash here. I wanted to get all of it in. It just wasn't coming together in a way that wasn't just going to. Like the things with this is you can't like half-ass it and deploy it. If you remove all of X and don't do all of Y, it's just like, okay, why did you just remove all of that? I don't understand. And we weren't just able to bring those packages of changes together, especially while we've got a whole new class in development, getting fully balanced and prepared. And that made it even twice as hard because, as Jonathan's mentioned in the past, and we've talked about, every single time we make a new class, we end up changing every system under the sun. And then we want some of those in and some of those not in. And it was just this giant ruckus of, it's like a kind of just massive writhing changes everywhere. And it was so hard.
Literally just merging the changes was a disaster. Like just like picking the things, like the commits, like do these guns go in, do those ones not go in? Like we're in the middle of doing like a massive bleed revamp in order to do the duelist, and yet we also want to try to somehow like what parts of that need to go in and what parts don't, and like it's just like such a crazy puzzle. And we are at the point where literally like our producers were like, we don't know if we can make a build of this. of like what you want. Like we've got a bunch of changes. We don't think we can even create a build that works in the timeline that we need it to be. So yeah, it was challenging even on that level. But not only that, there was the issue of just like more changes were needed, like more things needed to actually happen as well.
For example, to support echoing strikes, we had to make it, we effectively refactored our entire cloning system, which kind of touched on every single skill in the game. And it's like, okay, well, we don't want that because it's untested, has a bunch of ramifications and stuff we still need to iterate on. Yet now any change we have to make to every single skill now has a conflict when we're trying to merge it to the actual build. And honestly, it was just turning into an absolute disaster. And it was like, okay, this just isn't going to be ready, and we're just going to have to keep delaying it, and to the point where like, what are we even going to get here? And yeah, it just wasn't really feasible, honestly, and it was causing us, I mean, honestly, I would say that working around all of that was making everything take significantly longer. And then all of a sudden now we're getting less done because we're having to work around that, and it was just not coming together. And it is sad, and I am real gutted about it because there's a lot of like real cool stuff there. Like we have Ascendancy class reworks, we have, you know, many new uniques, reworked uniques, we have just stuff everywhere. And I was like, man, this stuff is cool. And I was even just describing it all to Jonathan and how excited I was about it. And I was like, no, I want it all in there, but it just honestly wasn't production wise feasible at all. So it's sad.
Go ahead.
It is more for 1.0 though, so that's always good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, with it being such like a eldritch horror of interconnected balance changes there, are you worried about putting it out at 1.0 then? Because that was like
no,
the thing.
Because the difference is that when we're making like an 0.55 patch, what we're doing is we're taking changes from our kind of like development version, we're merging them in. But when we're going to make a entirely new release, that's what's called a retag. We effectively like take everything that we have on our development version, and it's all going to go live. So there's not like this kind of same production hell that you get when you're trying to like make a build out of parts from.
I think he means from the testability sake, maybe.
Well, sure, I guess so. I mean, yeah, there's always that, but I mean, look, 1.0 is going to get a hell of a lot of testing. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff to do there. So our QA team will be all over that.
We got more time now to make sure it's right as well. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Since most of the balance changes are being deferred to 1.0, I won't like dive into too many of the balance related questions at this point, since it's all still obviously quite a ways away. But one of the things we did discuss was the plus levels side of things, and that is probably the one that came up the most. And I know you guys said in the past that you were reviewing some changes in 0.5 from that to see how they landed. But it does seem like plus levels are still seen as quite a bit of a problem, crowding out uniques and increasing inavailability in some cases as well with some of the stuff from the Runes of Aldor. So how are you feeling about plus level balance overall at this point now, or moving forwards towards 1.0? Is that on your radar there?
It is still on the radar, yes. I haven't actually done the changes for it yet, and I don't 100% know exactly what to do, but I mean, we've had probably 15 discussions about it now, so it's one of those, it's turning into the next dexterity for sure. And we'll see. We'll end up somewhere for sure. I just don't know exactly what that is right now, but it's the second on the spreadsheet. There's like a spreadsheet called Mark to do something, and it's the second one. So it's
what's number one out of interest?
We're having another balance meeting today to discuss it. So what is number one? It's probably just whatever I added last. Number one is reserved for this hasn't been sorted in the list yet.
Okay.
Because I just insert at the top of the sheet when I add stuff. So and then it gets reprioritized.
But that one stays at number 2. I see. Okay. Have you guys discussed like some of the things being kicked around? I've seen like, I don't know what's a good solution and what's not, and for what reasons here. But have you discussed like, maybe like level 30 is the cap that you can reach for gems, or limiting the amount you can get there, or is it more of something you're looking at? It's maybe just about getting the numbers right. Like we just want to bring those down to certain levels. Where do you kind of feel it is?
دروب خلصوا اللي باقي؟ لا باقي.
There is a cap, but yes, caps.
باقي أصلا الساعة 12. الساعة 12 بيبدأ وش اسمه الريس حق باتل اوف اكزايل 2.
Well, honestly, I'd
باقي
say there is a few problems with like
بس
caster
المشكلة ان
itemization, and I want to
المشكلة
make
ان
sure we
تويتش ما ادري
don't
ايش
just
جاية
take away that
ضرب.
itemization. Even very early in the game, caster itemization isn't as good as it could be. But it's really hard when you're dealing with fundamental mod pools. Like even early game runes are not as impactful, obviously, for casters, right? Where you get like flat damage ones for attackers and
شوف
casters don't.
انا الحين
It
عندي هذه
propagates all
شوف
the way
ما اقدر اسوي
through,
لها
and I
كليم.
get that some of the leagues have added some, breach caster items, for example, have added some in-game itemization, but there is a more fundamental problem here for sure.
شوف
So I don't.
drop was not
I just
claimed.
don't want to make the itemization for casters worse. Let's make it really. That's honestly how it is.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you come up with there then.
I get that it extends further than just casters, but like that's the main thing of not wanting to ruin.
Yeah,
I
there's
know
almost two separate discussions there.
Everyone has a different perception of like, what is good itemization or not. I'm talking about just generally what we believe to be good itemization as opposed to
I don't necessarily see an inherent problem with plus levels. I think it's just that the power level of it and its availability is high to the point where it does crowd out other item choices. So it feels like you're, if it's not that, then it's not worth using effectively.
We definitely have a thing right now where every single caster unique that gets made, it's like doesn't have plus gem levels, sucks. And
yeah, 1 alch.
Even with all of the new uniques we've been making, it's like you kind of want to default to be like, this needs +4, this needs +6, this needs plus, and it's like, do we really have to put this on literally everything?
Yeah,
but to compare, like, in the same way that you're making when you're making a weapon, like generally you can't just be like, nah, I'm not going to put any damage mods on it. So like a martial weapon. So it just doesn't feel quite the same, and I do understand why. I've discussed that before, but
ودك زعلان مني؟ لا يا حبيبي لا زعلان منك ولا شيء. أدري بيك تلعب بس هاي اللعبة. لا أنا ألعب هاي اللعبة ولا
أبغى
غيرها.
Rights event. So just to clarify for folks, this being an event is different to a regular expansion. It's a different thing entirely. It's not a league and expansion in the same way. So what of the changes that you talked about are specific to this Forbidden Rights event versus core game changes here as well?
So this is our first time ever that we've had a league be both running and core. And we just noticed there was a lot of people still playing Runes of Aldo. We didn't want to end it. So we wanted to keep that running. So we've had to do a large number of hacks.
وش في شيء شو اسمه له علاقة بجي تي اي اليوم ولا وش السالفة؟
The tablets are for the event and standard league. So because the league is in every area.
عليكم السلام هلا بحر.
To further it.
الدروب شغال بس المشكلة تويتش ما ادري ايش جاية مضروب.
I mean, you don't get remnants in every area during the event, but you can once you start using tablets, and it's
سربوا بث نتفليكس على تويتش وتويتش تبند من ايش؟
Played our previous leagues for PoE2, like Fate of the Val, and then the Temple became core. Ultimately, it should feel like all the content from Runes of Elder is now in its core state while you're playing in the event and standard leagues. And if you continue to play Runes of Elder, you should notice no difference. That's pretty much it. We have made some changes, like obviously it's not introduced now until, so currently in the Forbidden Rights event, the content, the characters aren't introduced until Act 4 when you're doing the quest in Act 4. So you won't see any through Act 1, 2, and 3. What else is different there? I think the only other thing we may have, I'm pretty sure we changed it is, which I don't know how people are going to respond to this one, but we've removed from the Forbidden Rights and Standard League, so it's not in the current Runes of Elder, it didn't want to affect the economy, but Elder Saga, the mods from it are now in the core mod pool of what can generate on logbooks, as opposed to requiring that item. You'll have to determine the rarity yourself, and then we've replaced that outcome from the remnant encounters, just so that the entirety of the end game for that isn't just Elder's Sagaing, and that's it.
Awesome. Good stuff.
شكلهم نرفوا الدر ساقة دي من
for the new league, the event. The Sacred Bloom from the rituals that lets you add the Sacred Wildwood to maps How rare are these roughly? Is that something we could be applying to every decent map, or just kind of the most juiced ones because it's like going to be rare and valuable? It's a big thing, being able to get the wildwood.
It's about 1 in 5 maps to get one and about, but
Okay.
give or take. So yeah, you're not going to run it every map, but of course it's tradable. So
yeah,
feel free to just go ahead and buy them. So yeah, I don't know. I think that was a pretty decent rate, but you know, we may still iterate.
انت لاعب جي تي اي
That's
6.
the sort of thing you could easily like afford.
لا ما بعد نزلت هي عشان العبها. هي بعدين بتكون على الكونسول. انا ما عندي كونسول. طيب اوكي شباب الكليم اشتغل ترى.
In Affliction League, it was probably the most insane juicing thing we've ever had. So both in terms of difficulty and reward, which is really cool for a number of reasons. Like obviously people like big loot explosions, but also you could make like the hardest monsters of all time outside of like, you know, deepest delves. Is this potentially going to be a similarly spicy thing for Path of Exile 2?
It's obviously pretty hard to compare the drops because it's just an entirely different drop ecosystem. Like, are you going to be having to hover and identify 100 heavy belts in every map? Probably not, you know. But for those who that is my strict memory of Affliction. Is like I am so sick of looking at heavy belts on the ground.
Yep.
You know. I think they actually got
إذا سويت كليم كيف استخدم الدروب الحين أوريك.
Maybe even more than
crazy. I've only ever got one in more.
Yes, I have equal memories of Affliction. Don't worry about that. But the way that the wisps scale the monsters is a bit different anyway. So instead of just rarity, PoE1 did rarity, quantity, and chance for items to be currency, I believe as it was. Instead, here what we've done is blue wisps turn monsters magic. Normal monsters magic, yellow wisps add mods to rare monsters, and purple wisps add rarity to everything. So purple, magenta, and the
سويت لك كليم أنا.
You're stacking rare monsters. Obviously, yellow and purple is the right combination to get. So, are you going to expect the same levels of juice? Hard to say. It should definitely be a good alternate way to juice in-game maps compared to say something like Delirium right now. And of course, though, you can stack both of them. So, you know, to some degree, of course, because they both get better with tablets, so they are contesting with one another. But you can just run both and stack it with everything else that is in the in-game currently. So, should be pretty out there, pretty crazy.
Right on. Rapid fire. The Trial of Chaos was the changes there were amazing. It was one of my favorite games. So those changes, there's huge sort of improvements there. I'd love to see that. Is Sekima's likely to get a similar treatment in some way on the way to 0.1.0? It's not as bad in my opinion, but
in terms of content, that existing content that needs improving, it is the next like as an actual in content, not like character side or balance or anything. It is the next thing on our list that is the worst thing.
The next worst.
So yes, we definitely want to, but obviously lot to do for the end of the year. So we'll have to see if we can fit it in, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, like if not, I would say if not for release, then you'd look at it for 1.1 kind of territory for sure. But honestly, the changes we made to Trial of Chaos are like it's so.
وش ما بعد جاء.
Oh my god.
هو من هنا
should
صح؟
never have been in that state. Like I was writing and reading all the patch notes, and I was just like, we should never have had to write this. This should not have ever needed to have been a patch note. This is like horrendous. And I'm sure when we get to the Trial of Sekimas, we're going to have a similar situation going on. So. It's not as bad. At least there's like a kind of strategy there to some degree, and ways to make money, and you know, divines. But yeah, it needs a substantial amount of love for sure.
Awesome, good to hear it then. A few more rapid fires on the end game. The challenge level of end game casts out pretty early currently. That's good for build diversity, honestly. But it does mean that there are some limited options for like testing your more powerful characters.
أنا بلعب هذا البلد.
More challenging like end game content. That's something on the radar for maybe for 1.0 or something.
I don't want to commit to like higher tiers of boss content and difficulty to too much.
والله نسيت شلون كرفت
especially
فيه
with
أنا.
respect to Uber bosses until we have the character balance in the right spot. And in theory, 1.0 should have them in the right spot. But you know how balance goes with these things, with live service products in particular. And similar to PoE1, right? It's every single league we have balance changes. So it's one of those infinite tasks. That being said, I definitely don't want to add Uber boss content until we've felt like that's in a stable spot for sure. I actually went out of my way to play a number of kind of atrocious builds this league. Just like I picked literally the worst thing, the things that were being played the least, and I played them. And honestly, fighting those pinnacles with those characters was insanely difficult. And I was like, if we were to add content beyond this, it's just impossible. It's just not going to even be possible.
أنا أذكر إنك تسوي لك لين من هنا سعد.
And I played a good character as well, and I was just like, okay, we need to we've got some work to do here before we go and create a bunch of content that a bunch of players will literally never be able to even achieve, even if they did everything right, because the character balance is the low end is just not in the right spot at all, and honestly the very, very top end, the top 1% kind of builds is not in the right spot either. So once we get that, I'm hoping to be able to actually start, you know, thinking about it. But I mean, the Wildwood will go towards making things harder, so rest assured.
Yeah, some juicing potential there. There's been a few questions about the state of tablets, focusing on tablet management, trading, rolling them, the work that kind of goes into getting the modifiers that you want for your in-game farming strategies. You get it compared to things like
اللي عنده ذا الأخضر اللي متعلق.
So they've got that double whammy of like random modifiers and the limited uses. What do you like?
ما أتوقع بيكون عند الكثير.
Tablet design, is this something you
قليل جدا اللي بيكون عندهم ذا MTX.
Heard that brought up. Yeah, how are you guys feeling about tablets overall there?
ما لقيت الدروب غريبة. اي والله ما ادري، انا اذكر انك تلقاه هنا كونسيومبل شنو ما طلع لنا الحين.
The current state of endgame there, and talking about all of the changes we want to make around there and how it compares to PoE2 and what parts do we like and not like. Personally, I really like the tablet, the mod rolling side of things, and what we've found is generally over time there is at least an audience that are more aligned towards wanting determinism, and thus the mod rolling can get phased out. And I actually think that this has been a big part of the discussion where we're looking at this. I feel like by adding more determinism and removing these like random axes, the strategies end up becoming quite dull and then have to just be balanced around that determinism, and then they get neutered, and then you've just lost kind of everything because everything is all equal and everything's all balanced. And it's had that effect, like definitely it's had that effect as to where the fine line is between the kind of mod rolling and the determinism. I would say that it's something we still have to kind of figure out, but I'm quite happy with how that is right now, where there's like some crazy stuff you can do, but it requires specific tablets with specific mods. And so, yeah, I immediately caught us. We were actually doing this for 055. I was like, all of a sudden I saw a bunch of the really spike modifiers getting kind of like people pushing to nerf this, nerf that, get this in line with the rest of the content. And I was like, let's not do that right now. I think there's one or two that like, okay, I understand the beyond reason, but I was like, let's pull back some of that because I want to actually reevaluate how much power you should be able to get out of these random modifiers as opposed to things that are just baseline always on. So yeah, there's still some evaluation to do there, but personally, I'm quite happy with it. I love that you get some tablets that are out of control and cause you to have, well, my recent demonstration, an army of sentinels or sentries following you around, adding runes to everything. We have some crazy stuff with the Expedition. I mean, the Expedition tablet mod is actually a lot larger and has a lot more spike stuff at the top, so I'm actually quite curious to see how people feel about that in the Forbidden Rights, to see how that plays as well. We've tried to make sure that mod pool is larger than the other tablet mod pools to see if that is something people resonate well with or not well with as well. So yeah, you can. Anyway, my point being, like, we're still discussing it, and we're still kind of testing some stuff with the tablets, and Forbidden Rights will reveal some of that. But ultimately, personally, I'm pretty happy with where it sits overall.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to hear it's in discussion then. One thing I saw that was like maybe an easy win was to get bookmarks in for the in-game trade, because I think
مشتري كبير.
convenience when trying to trade this stuff, and being able to set those up and bookmark those would be pretty sweet.
Pretty sure that is a thing.
Oh.
So
Yeah,
we have favorite trades and recent trades as two things that are internally, as of yesterday, implemented on PoE2.
Oh hell yeah! Awesome.
I think it was on
ما لقيته حتى هنا.
gamepad and or console, and now it's on keyboard and mouse as of yesterday internally, and that we should be able to get that into 055.
Yes, excellent. Easy win. Good to hear. Well, I will let you folks go, and we've got a race to prepare for. To swap over to here in just a moment. Looking forward to casting out as the grand final of the qualifiers. It's going to be a spicy one for sure. So, thanks very much for joining me, Mark and Jonathan, for the Q&A here once again, and best of luck with the rest of the
Thank you very much for hosting. It's always a pleasure to have you to ask the questions, and hopefully you guys enjoy the Duelist when you finally get to play it on December the 11th when the game comes out.
Look forward to seeing what you have in store
في
for us.
Path of Exile 1
We'll see you.
2631. صاد هذه ما بدقيقة مرة.
Cheers,
See you later.
لأني لعبت يعني فترة طويلة بالابليكيشن حقهم أو اللانشر حقهم. Path of Exile 2 1974. وبرضو طبعا هي ترى مو بأنها كلها وقت فعلي، لا، كثير من الأوقات يكون مأفك أصلا. طيب شباب، في أحد قدر يفتح الصندوق؟ محمد موجود، أنت أول واحد خذها، ما أدري عاد عندك تفتحه ولا لا. لا يكون الدروب في باث 1. لا أنا رحت بس أشوفه. إيه أخذته ولا فتحته، بس هي أنا أقصد طلع عندك يعني في اللعبة ولا لا؟ أنا عندي لسه واقف على 80. طيب سوي ريفرش شيف. تصفيات الحين حقتهم ذي حلوة والله، خلينا نتفرج عليها. إيه يمكن عاد يتأخر شوية يا شباب، أعطوهم فرصة. تويتش ضارب، هي يا أخوي تويتش ما أدري إيش جاه. إيه أنا صح رحت بشوف هذا، أبغى أشوف هذا كيف شكله منه، نشوف فاتح بث ولا لا. والله ما فتح شيء، شكله بيرقد ذا. شلون طيب هو مغطي البتاع. أخذته في تويتش بس في اللعبة ما طلع لي، حتى ما طلع لي أنا، يبي له أتوقع شوية وقت. الحين السباق هذا حقهم ايش طريقته؟ مشكلة أنا ما تابعت حق باث اوف اكزايل 2.
Rise, welcome back, mate. We got a big race in store for us here today. This
أول
is
مرة
exciting,
أول مرة
man,
أشوف
mate. How
هذا.
you doing?
Ziggy, you gotta get speed running. The race is about
Yeah, we're
to
gonna go.
start. We've had some technical issues. Ziggy has really pushed Jonathan to the brink. Like we're gonna push our racers.
I'm trying to min-max Q&A time and race time. We're gonna get into the race now. Q&A is over. It's time for some racing. We have had 3 qualifiers thus far. Production, you can go take us over the line right away if you want.
Yeah.
Because we can just look who's on the starting line and who's ready to try and take this final qualifier spot. We've had 3 racers take their qualifier spots so far and secure their Ultra VIP tickets to ExileCon and the main stage for the grand final race at ExileCon itself. And it is a big one, but we're going to swap over as soon as we find out who is ready and what their player names are. But so far, we...
Yeah, you guys have to look at us for a second. The timer is a little bit off. Twitch has been having issues. Jonathan was falling asleep. Listen, we're trying our best over here with the tools that we have.
شوف يذب على جوناثان يقولنا كان شوي بيرقد.
In race 1, we
Ah,
had
Act
Gila
4.
take the top spot, that first qualifier spot, after being a fantastic Infernalist racer, swapping over to the Huntress and just giving us a fantastic week 1 performance. Then the next week we had Guy That Dies swapping from Mercenary to Huntress as well, and doing an amazing job in week 2 there as well. And then we had an insane performance from LHD last week, securing a sub 2-hour win with an early quit from the second place player as well.
Yeah. I was gonna say he wasn't the only person who had an amazing performance. Whole New Society
there was
up
going to
there
be
as
another
well.
one. Yeah, there could have
we'll
been
give you
two
guys a
amazing
rundown.
performances. Who is on stream
as you
for
can
us
see,
today? Who is kicking us off, Rise? Take us away, mate.
Well, the person that we were talking about was Whole New Society, who ended a little bit early. The players want to finish, and you can see him in the top left. So definitely a mercenary to watch out for. One of the last few remaining, and he's joined on the class by Crimson Cass, who is in the top right on the mercenary as well. Actually, that being said, Woodish is also still sticking with the mercenary. Very interesting stuff. I do know that Angormus, I believe, finally has made the switch. He was going back and forth, and eventually he did end up switching.
And Gormus, obviously a big name for us to watch, and we'll be no doubt seeing them a little bit later in the race. But Angormus, previously the winner of almost every other Path of Exile 2 race ever.
Yes.
Originally a warrior player, swapping over to mercenary just recently, but then swapping over to huntress now in the final week. A move of pure desperation, perhaps.
Oh no, Ziggy. No. I mean, okay.
What do you think?
Let's introduce Shackle Coach as well in the bottom right. A huge upset last week. He had an amazing race. Unfortunately, didn't end up dying, and the tilt.
يا أخي الهنترس غشاش
him and was never really
مع
quite
ذا
able to recover. He
التويستر.
had some really insane times. But yeah, when it comes to Angormus, he's happy, man. He's really proud of the times that he's been having. He's PBing almost every day, you know. He's really destroying his previous runs. He's not just been happy with the RNG that he has had, because, well, Huntress does require slightly less of the RNG, but also just he's improving. Even if he's not having good RNG, he is improving, as he is dropping low, fighting one of the first bosses that we've seen before.
Yeah, I mean, we've had very well practiced mercenary from Angormus, and I will say Angormus's practices on Huntress have been even better, but still it is the one that he doesn't have as much experience on it. And if there's any room for like some errors to occur,
خد يعرف أنا شلون يعرفون أماكن البوسز وذا.
even more likely for him this
أنا
week.
عجزت أحفظ اللاyout حق المنطقة.
I asked him about his prep here, and this is what he had to say. He said, well, TIE 23 qualified in the last one in 2023, if I remember correctly. So I feel pretty confident about my Huntress, and we'll see how it goes. So,
yeah,
you're gonna love that. Sure, it's a good point. Good point.
Yeah, I've complained about this before, right? That players were kind of slow to make that switch over to a seemingly superior class. So the fact that people are adjusting looks really good, but not everybody is convinced that Huntress is better. Again, Whole New Society, Woodish, they're sticking with it. And to give you guys a quick rundown of the rules, if you are new to these races, this will be the last qualifier for ExileCon PoE2. And it is a fixie race, so everybody's got the same layout, everybody's got the same shrines, they have the same boxes and the type of box, and I believe the tier of the role as well, not necessarily the roles themselves. So we're trying to make it as even as possible, but obviously the rare monsters there and everything is still mostly randomized, which, yeah, we might be seeing some
شو صار معكم؟ فتحتوا الصندوق؟ والله يا حبيبي أنا ما أدري، أنا ما دخلت اللعبة هشوف. دقيقة خلينا ندخل نشوف.
When we get there, as our players are progressing over and already past the witch, picking up their flasks and getting their support gem.
Whole New Society in a little bit of a dangerous position here, as he did get very surrounded by just a huge amount of werewolves, but it's also a phenomenal train of XP for him to soak up there. So manages to navigate things pretty well with some well-placed dodge roll angles, moving through the woods. Did have to backtrack a little bit, so maybe lost a bit of time, but gained a bunch of XP in the process. So nicely handled there by Whole New Society. It is cool to still see so many mercenaries starting this race, because when I saw Angormus swapping to Huntress, I was like, that's it, everyone's going to swap to Huntress. But I know that Crimson said he thinks better, but he's better on mercenary, and for others it might be the same. Honestly, I think it's still so close enough that absolutely I think, you know, it could have been a mercenary qualifying in previous weeks, and I think it still could be today. And certainly after last week's run, Whole New Society is a top contender for that, if they can keep that positive mental attitude and not have any early tap incidents or anything like that. But we saw Mercenary last week refine their strategy in Act 1 and 2 to compete with the Huntresses. Previously they were pushing to level 31 for the final run through the event.
يا أخي ساحب على اللعبة إيش هذا معاهم وإيش صاير؟ والله صاير تحديث، عدلوا بعض الأشياء وضافوا بعض الأشياء، واللعبة بتنزل رسمي إن شاء الله شهر 12.
and we should see
لا
even
روح
more
على الأغراض
refinements
أتوقع
this week. And
تلاقيهم.
if
لا
anyone
لا
had
وين
any secret
قصدك هنا؟
strategies in their back pocket,
لا ما
any
تلاقيه هنا،
little extra
تلاقيه هنا
pieces
المفروض.
that they were holding out for ExileCon, they're going to pull it out this week to get that
المفروض إنه
qualifier
هنا.
slot, 'cause it's all on the line this week.
المفروض
we also
إنه
have an
هنا.
update for you guys. We are restarting the campaign for the Twitch drops. Unfortunately, there has been an issue, but you guys should be able to get it within 24 hours of beginning to watch now. So whenever you are watching Twitch on any of the Path of Exile channels, you should be able to get your drops eventually.
Excellent, good stuff.
شوف الحين هو
Yeah,
يقول لك
you can play
فيه
in
مشكلة.
That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and also
يقول فيه مشكلة في الدروبس.
just to highlight another rule that we typically would have covered before the race, but again, we are running into some issues. Hopefully, things are going to be better now. The players don't just have to necessarily be number one in this qualifier, but also if one of the players who do qualify aren't able to participate at ExoCon, the second, so to say, best time from any of the races would be the one to qualify. Currently, that is Angormis with 2 hours, 2 minutes.
الآن إيش هذا السباق؟ شوف السباق هذا واحد من 4 سباقات. هذا السباق الرابع. اللي يفوز فيه يتأهل لإكزايل كون. إكزايل كون هذا زي المعرض حق اللعبة. راح يكون في أوكلاند في نيوزيلندا، هناك في آخر الدنيا. وهناك راح يكون فيه السباق اللي هو خلينا نقول لك النهائي. طبعا وأكيد فيه جوائز وكذا. قلنا فيه 4 سباقات. اللي يفوز كل سباق راح ياخذ تذكرة لأوكلاند اللي قلنا في نيوزيلندا، وراح ياخذ سكن، وراح ياخذ تذكرة لحضور المعرض. توقع بياخذ بعد زي الMTX الحصرية، شيء زي كذا. الهدف طبعا اللي متى يحسب ان الواحد فاز اذا وصل اكت 4، شال البوس حق اكت 4.
Going with the same strategy, so yeah, so cool to see that it's already been so popularized to make these little adjustments that honestly through the course of the entire race makes a huge difference. And you guys can see that with that 0.66 cooldown, the rearming of the twisters, the players are able to deliver some devastating damage. It's not super crazy in Act 1. Twisters really ramp up when you get to Act 2 and forward, but even for Act 1, yeah, you have to use everything that you have access to. And Gormis having already beaten
لا عادي أي واحد يقدر يشارك.
and now with Shackle Coach shortly behind and Woodish.
خلاص ما DMD لأنهم هم بدأوا الساعة 12 بتوقيتنا.
A last epoch legend already in the Grim Tangle. An incredibly nasty zone for our players. We've seen many rips in this one. People are dying less and less every week, but still every now and then these zones that you take for granted, that you practiced 1,000 times, can be so difficult when all the things come together.
Which is definitely someone to keep an eye on. Previously unknown Path of Exile 2 racer, like you said, had done some excellent runs in Last Epoch, another action RPG, but now coming out of nowhere to drop some insanely competitive runs in these qualifiers. So obviously making a play for the final qualifier slot today. And they've had a few weeks there where they definitely could have taken a win if things had not gone awry for them.
Yeah, Woodish is super interesting because you can see that he is a speedrunner. He knows what to do as somebody who wants to get the fastest time. He's just not quite had enough time with PoE2 to be
يعني ما في شيء جديد في السيزن عن الآن عشان أرجع ألعب. لا هو مو بسيزن، هو إيفنت. في بعض التغييرات عاد. بس عاد هل أنت رجع تلعب ولا لا؟ هذا عاد شيء أنت اللي تقدره.
And the only person we've really seen be competitive on the Druid, and here we've got them up in the top left now on stream, Relicario has consistently had a really good start on the Druid. And that first time we saw them, he was absolutely smashing it, but just had no defensive gear and ended up dying as a result. But then much better runs since then. and honestly making the Druid look competitive, which is surprising because it's definitely not the favored class to win. But still, there's that long shot hope there for people that like to see a little bit of diversity in the classes on stage. So I love to see it. I think the Druid gameplay is super interesting as well. So it's really cool to see that on the stream. We get to see the spells,
too,
the
also.
volcano, and the shapeshifting as well.
Because Relicario actually had to take the time to fight the Rotten Druid, which a lot of the Huntresses and the Mercenaries skip. Yeah, it is optional. It does kind of depend on your drops. You are taking a risk if you potentially don't end up getting support gems later on. But it seems mandatory for the Druid because, Relicario already found the exit and had to go back to the checkpoint and find the Druid. It is pretty good, like Ziggy mentioned, with the volcano. You do have to channel it for quite a bit of time, and the boss moves around, which makes it a little bit tricky. But Relicario, once
شوف لاحظ هذا اللي فوق على اليسار.
competitive.
أنا اللي لاحظت إنهم ما يستخدمون بدي أرمر.
It works though.
الظاهر لأن البدي أرمر يبطئهم.
Very good. Actually, some of the best single target damage on the right bosses there. Outside of the later twisters where they get obscene. We had Wudish get a Lazuli ring, Iron Ring though for Angormus, a little bit better. He immediately transmutes it for some attributes, which doesn't hurt. The Huntress in particular needs a bit of everything. They need intelligence for some of those like spirit skills, I believe, and they need a bit of strength and dexterity as well for defensive gear. All that stuff is important for them, but 2 attributes is not that much. So maybe something. Oh, I didn't see what went on the ring there. I don't know if it was damage. You want to try and get those damage rolls on those rings if possible. The rings and the gloves are a great source of damage, and they help insulate you against getting not very good weapon RNG too. If you get a bit of damage on those items, but you can't find a great weapon, then you're still going okay. So an important thing to do for
interesting.
sure.
A Lazuli for Relicario, he doesn't even pick it up, then he runs back for it. I'm not sure.
Oh, maybe just a little bit of sweaty palms there. Maybe the pressure of the pressure.
Yeah, it's interesting too because
a little bit there.
With the caster setup, I'm not quite sure how much he benefits from that. So I wonder if he could have maybe moved on a little bit earlier.
يا أخي الهنترس كذاب. شوف اللي فوق يسار، اللي فوق يمين. يا أخي الهنترس دمجه عالي. ذي تويستر ذي مصيبة.
I guess we forgot to kind of mention that.
Yes, we've been so rushed to this one. We forgot. By the way, this race is Act 5 Tavakai kill, in case you didn't know.
Yes.
Yeah, what's the objective of this race? Get through and kill Tavakai. Yeah, by the way, important detail. Oh, Relicario going very low, having a lot of trouble with this rare monster there. Oh, they do block projectiles from the front. I actually don't know if that happens on the volcano or not. Double gem drop. So that's a random gem plus the guaranteed one. So you got even more than you needed, which that can be a big deal because that saves. In the end, maybe didn't need to do the Rotten Druid because,
or maybe he can skip something later. I think it still can be good.
Thing, right? It's like that lets you do something earlier or skip something.
There have been so many different iterations of these caster setups for our players, and most of the time they perform incredibly well in Act 1 and then end up falling off due to some unfortunate deaths later on. But I mean, it was the same case for Huntress for a very long time where players thought that it wasn't a class that was viable because people would die so much. There is a 2.5-minute death timer, and depending on the sort of boss that you're doing, that might really extend because the bosses do end up resetting if you die. So it is pretty brutal if you do end up dying, but that's not something that's going to be happening for Woodish, hopefully, as he's already killed his Asinia. Wow, nice quick burst there towards the end.
Yeah, you'll notice the mercenary there taking advantage in this early game stage of generating rage in bear form with those swipes to get that big bonus, more attack damage, and then using those in between those grenade cooldowns. Later on, you don't really have room for that. You've got other things you want to do. But a nice little early game tactic to enhance that damage on these early bosses. And Wudish getting, I believe, that first kill there on Asinia. Now with Relicario just starting out, we should see some good damage on Relicario. Asinia is a bit more stationary and eats a fair bit of that volcano damage. So you can see that damage on the volcano is really good and just super consistent. Yeah, look at that damage there. Yeah. That health bar is just getting obliterated. And then, for comparison, we have Angormus on the Twister, which this is a pretty decent spot for Twister, but it actually has to bounce off that wall and then come back and bounce and hit her again. She's too close to that wall in the to the hole to bounce off of that. But nonetheless, Angormus still getting a reasonably fast kill there, although she is repositioning. He gets that freeze and chill there. That's a big one, and finishes her off with that. So nice kill. Shackle Coach just slightly behind. Similar sort of positioning there. And gets his kill smoothly there at the end too. Very nice. Asinia's pretty much everyone there.
A unique item for Angora
والله يا
is
أخي
air
الدرود
for Shaco
ذا اللي
Coach.
فوق
For Angora,
يسار
oh, for Shaco Coach, it was
شغال
the
صح؟
belt. Some
ما
more
توقعت
potential
يعني
there for
الدرود
Shaco,
بيكون
especially this
مناسب
early on where
للريس.
players don't really have anything. You can see for Relicario, he's kind of messing around with the chess piece.
يلا
He's
يلا
trying to
جاي.
avoid the movement speed penalty of having the chess piece equipped, but that's also, you know, kind of a risky strategy early on as you are just super duper vulnerable and it's very easy to die. So you're always trying to min-max your mobility versus your defenses. And you can
هلا
also
والله
spot that our players are doing a lot of the league mechanic. It's a very important component.
والله ما انتبهت توني أول مرة أقراها.
As it grants a lot of
إي والله.
XP, some guaranteed rewards in very specific zones that our players are going to have to go for, and then also the random runes and
والله
currencies
شكلي بلعب
are very
بفروست
beneficial
بولت.
long term. Man, I gotta say, an impressive amount of
إيه
optimization
ممتاز.
coming out from Relicario in these early stages. But yeah, you can see that honestly the defenses are
لا
just
لا.
such a big deal for these casters. And yeah, Relicario taking full
إيه
advantage
كذا
of
فيديو
every tool
مسوي.
that he has available for himself right now. Reaches his boss and
والله يا
Woodish
أخي حتى
halfway
التوتم
through
كويس صراحة.
his Draven, I believe being the first
كل
one
شيء وارد.
to get there.
Yeah, pretty good kill so far on Draven there. It was actually Angormus got the bow. It's a Widow Hail, which is an interesting one. He probably
اسمه
vendors
فروست
it, but I
بولت.
have actually heard that if you get a Widow Hail, there is an obscenely fast strategy that can be pivoted to. But with Angormus only having done a week of Huntress practice, I don't know if Angormus has practiced for that edge case scenario.
أيوه.
I can't imagine he would have.
لا
Right?
ما بفروست
But
بولت
apparently,
جليشيال
there
بولت
is
آسف.
something that some
هذا
races
أعطيتك
imagine
اسم
like,
البلد
oh,
غلط.
this is the
اسمه
one that said to me one
جليشيال.
time was like, oh, you just wait and
جليشيال
see if someone
بولت.
gets a Widow Hail drop. I'm like, oh man. So
Yeah, I've heard about it, but we just haven't seen it. I don't
yeah,
know.
we've never seen it before. So I've never seen someone be positioned to get that and maybe take advantage of it. But I just can't
لا أذكر
imagine that
فروست
Angormus
بولت
has
أنا ما أدري وش
practiced for that,
شوفه
'cause
من
that's
وين جبت
just
فروست
such an
بولت ذي
edge
من.
case
Well, the thing is
scenario.
too, you know, if this was the first qualifier, second, maybe even third,
Yeah,
I can see it. But
maybe
like,
you'd
if you
gamble it.
think that you're good enough to qualify
أبي
for a
أبحث
code,
عنها
do you
أشوفها.
need to take a
Angormus.
risk? Do you need to
Yeah, and he definitely
optimize
is
for
good
something
enough
like
to
that?
qualify just off of a
Oh yeah,
regular run here. Relicario
sure.
with an insanely fast kill on Lachlan
لا
there. That
يفوتك
Log Chain
الناس
is
اللي
just
قاعدين
so good on
يسوون
these early
ريس.
bosses, especially those bigger
شاركين في
infestational ones. You
الريس
can see
قصدي في
Angormus pulling
السباق.
Lachlan into this little narrow area there. Obviously gives you a little
والله
bit less
جميل
room
صراحة.
to reposition, but they're
حبيت.
actually pulling them into this exit section here where you get really good twister bounces. Lachlan gets frozen there in the doorway, so he's not able to pull him any further, but
أتوقع أن
it's not
الدرود ذا اللي
as
فوق
good
يسار.
necessarily, but it still does the job, and you get those nice twister
تحت
bounces,
يمين.
big damage, and you're right there at that doorway as well, on top of that. Picking up a little bit of extra loot there.
بيصير ريستارت.
It is
كيف
very
بيصير
easy to
ريستارت
snipe
قصدك
and
بيصير
to
ريست؟
slam you in this
إذا
position
تقصد
whenever
ريست
he is
بيصير ريست
frozen,
في
and
ال في
some
الايفنت.
players die while trying
فروست
to crush
بولت
this boss. They
ستريمر
breach
يلعب
defenses,
ديستني.
but everybody is going to make it through
من هو
successfully.
فروست بولت ستريمر
Relicario,
يلعب
Woodish
ديستني؟ ما
progressing
أدري ما
back into
فهمت.
their zone, looking to kill Crowbell and get those
إيه أعرفها
additional
ديستني.
skill points. Gonna make a quick pit stop for another, I believe, support gem from the side event.
ما
This
تويتش.
for Woodish.
لا هو دروب واحد بس تويتش.
Angormus managed to get himself some gloves with
تويتش
just
رايحين
some little
فيها.
melee skills and a little tiny bit of cold damage.
ليه
No
وش
damage
اي
on the
وش سالفة
ring,
جي تي اي؟
but
اشوف
pretty
الشباب
much
في
lackluster,
ستريم يقولون
but
جي
the
تي اي
game's
جي
pretty
تي اي بس ما
soothing. Gives you some
فهمت.
move speed boosts. So honestly, a pretty good start here for Angormus on the Huntress. So pretty what you're looking for there. I know he had some good. He said he had like a 28-minute Act 1 with no movement speed. So hopefully on pace to even beat that here, since he didn't
لحظة
get a early
رجع
movement
مرة
speed drop.
ثانية شوفوا لحظة.
Just a little bit
That's a big
faster.
deal.
شوف
Yeah,
الحين
again, we've seen
شوف
this
رجع
for
يحسب لي
PoE1
من
racing,
جديد.
especially as PoE2 racing is still kind of in its infancy. People have been doing it for quite
ماستري
a
بوكس
while,
بس
but
شوف عندي
it's
واحد
also hard to
تحت
develop these
اوريدي
strategies.
كليم
Metas are always changing.
يعني معناته
Yeah,
اثنين.
for PoE1, that was a big deal that people weren't just performing well whenever they had good RNG runs.
اوكي
They were
ما
performing
ادري
well
والله.
whenever they had the bad runs. Ty 23 called this the garbage can strategy, and you know what? It proved to be super successful for him. So maybe some of our players are going to be adjusting to that in PoE2 as well. And yeah, Angorma's being super happy with even some of his like slower runs, but more
ايه
consistent. Definitely showcases that
والله.
it's a pretty good approach, that you don't need to take these big risks to come out triumphantly here. And he's in a good spot right now for sure.
Woodish has a pretty decent set of gear at the start going here. A little bit of extra damage on the gloves. Nothing really.
ايه تلخبطت والله في اسم السكلات. بعد جليشل بولت مو بفروست بولت.
So at level 23, level 23. At level 10 they can swap. You can swap.
ما أنا ما أدري والله وين جبت فروست بولت منه.
Sitting there waiting in his inventory for him. So already set up for that one.
ما أدري يمكنه بيلد سبق ولعبته في باث اوف اكزايل 1 ولا شيء.
For sure. Shackle coach taking his time, or rather Crowbell
ايه
taking his
صح
time with a little bit of
ايه
RP.
حق
Most of our players are
حق
already made it
شو
past
اسمه
it, and Relicario
الكومت وذا ايه
looking
تذكرته.
so good on the Druid, potentially the first person to enter Elgin Village. Again, we will be showcasing you guys different checkpoints where our players are going to be reaching different times that they're going to be hitting that point.
كل يوم واحد والله ما ادري بحر ما انا اشوف طلع عندي اثنين الحين. والله يجينا صندوقين بركة يا الله من فضلك.
How much XP you have and where you're getting, you have to hit these XP breakpoints to be able to progress nicely. We've seen players get out of Act 1 sooner and sooner. It used to be level 14 for Mercenary, now it's much earlier. And in general, people are getting less levels. And
لا الدروب هذا تاخذه الحين.
more quickly than it was before.
إذا كملت 30 دقيقة تاخذه. يا حبيبي الدروب هذا وين اللي يسأل عن الدروب منهم؟
He fumbled it for like one click and that was a very difficult moment for him.
يا الأمير بسرعة الدروبات سويت حساب تويتش علشانك. ترى أنا ما استفيد من الدروبس ذي يا شباب. أنا ما استفيد منها الدروبات ذي لكم وأنتم مو بلي. أنا ما استفيد أي شيء ترى من الدروبات، بس اللي يستفيد منها حضوركم والحديث معكم فقط. طيب الدروب هذا شوف تاخذ الصندوق هذا اللي هو اسمه ميستري بوكس. ميستري بوكس هذا يصير داخله MTX متنوعة، في بورتال، فينيشر افكت هذا التأثير اللي يجي إذا ذبحت رير ولا يونيك. وش في بعد؟ في هايد اوت، في كذا شيء يعني. فحظك ونصيبك إذا فتحت الصندوق إذا فتحت الصندوق هذا يطلع لك واحدة من الأشياء اللي تكلمنا عنها. شو اللي صاير اليوم صاير فيها لخبطة في تويتش، ما أدري إيش سالفته. أنا الآن كملت 30 دقيقة سويت كليم الواحد، شوفها تحت، شوف هنا خانة كليم طلع لي واحد، شوف هنا مكتوب 1 hour ago. الحين رجعت مرة ثانية كلمني واحد من شباب الديسكورد قال لنا طلع له واحد ثاني، فجيت أنا شيكت عندي لقيت في واحد ثاني عندي هنا. فهل راح يجيني اثنين؟ ما أدري والله، شكلها مو بجايني ولا واحد. فبس هذه السالفة.
We're having a bit of an early game shuffle here now as we start to get into the Ogden Village. We'll start.
تحتاج ديفاين عندي كثير وساحب على السيزون، ما أظن برجع والله. ما أنا بالنسبة لي ما أحتاج، لأني أنا إن شاء الله الجمعة الجاية بلعب الإيفنت، فبنبدأ من الصفر. يودونك نيوزيلندا والله يا ما في همل أروح. صادق أنت يا بحر، 16 ساعة من هنا في الطيارة، شحمة إذنك تنمل من الجلوس. ما هي أمل أروح.
Faster currently yet. We'll certainly shuffle the streams around, our viewpoints around, to see who is currently in the lead as we go. We'll check in. But we do have 23 back on the stream once again. 23 was a racer who came out of nowhere and had some insanely good runs earlier, but we also just didn't see them much last week, I don't think, right? So good to see
وش الرقم ذا؟
And 23 had some very, very fast Huntress runs, but fell apart a little bit towards the end of some of the races.
شوف هذا T31 311247 ما أدري وش ذا. شوف هو الأول الحين.
Definitely another Chinese player that might be able to qualify. Honestly, this race is just so stacked. There's so many people who have had demigods and previous incredible placements.
روح عشان تقبص خدود جوناثان، أما تقبص ما أدري وين طلعت ذا الكلمة منه يا خالد. خالد أو فيصل؟ لا فيصل.
And then Keom is actually going to be rank 2 for now. Again, keep in
لا
mind he sacrificed some
لا
XP
الهدف
not to
اللي
lose
شو
Zone at all
اسمه
here.
يخلص اكت
But
4
with how close
خلاص
things were,
يعتبر فايز.
especially last week in Act 1 and 2, I think this is going to shuffle quite a lot as we currently catch Relicario using that volcano to take down his Executor.
يا اخي شوف عشان ما يضيع شيء الوقت راح كلمها وبعدين راح جمع اللوت بعدين رجع لها يعني فيما تطلع يلعن ام الشغله قسم بالله ما في امل اسوي كذا انا.
To spread that damage around to all the packs. Nice spellcaster strategy that we've seen. We've even seen mercenaries use it in previous races. With Relicario taking full advantage.
يسحرونك انتبه من اللي يسحرني. شو حقين الحين نيوزيلندا ذولي معروفين بالسحر يعني.
But yeah, we've got like you said, this is a very stacked race. There's like maybe 6+ names where if you said they took the final qualifier, none of those people I would, necessarily be surprised. I do not know how to call how this race is going to go. Right until the end,
yeah,
and even then, you never know.
If you guys do take a look at Chuckle Coach's cam, it is because we're using the spectator tool. You might notice that sometimes it seems like he's a little bit AFK or something like that. No, he's just interacting with the UI, and that's not something that we're going to be able to show to you guys. So he's not lagging, he's not having any problems.
تدلع انت يا محمود. ايش درجة الحرارة عندكم 20؟ نو بليز كنا عندنا درجة حرارة في الليل 40.
Very quickly.
Yes, thankfully the game does pause when you're on the passive screen, so you don't get slammed by the executioner. And the races definitely take advantage of those pauses. Some big whirlwind bounces.
Oh, 23!
Oh, goes down. Oh, to the boss. Oh, well, we'll have a clip for that in just a moment. That is a surprise there. I mean, I don't think we've seen that.
I mean,
كيف يوم الجمعة بترجع من صفر سيزون جديد؟ لا مو بسيزون جديد، ايفنت فقط وليس سيزون. انه في تعديلات يعني حاطين عدلوا ترايل اوف كيوس عدلوا كذا شغله يعني.
So you don't die.
He dies to it? I mean, again, it is easy to die to this boss, but people have practiced
for sure.
so
It is
much.
dangerous.
He must have just pushed his boundaries a little bit too
ذا الصيني 2-3-1 مات عند البوس. شوف وقفوها الحين ما يقدر يتحرك. اللي فوق على اليمين عقوبة.
And yet we got someone one shot by it.
كيف نظام الايفنت بالضبط؟ الايفنت يعني زي اللي على الكلام اللي طلع واللي شفناه في الستريم انه مثل الليج ميكانيك بتصير مبنية على الريتشوال. ما في معلومات كثيرة عنها، بس في من الاشياء اللي اضافوها يعني في طريقة. طبعا هذه جايبينها من باث اوف اكزايل 1 اللي هي كانت من ليج افليكشن. هذه تقدر تجوز فيها المابات، بس على كلامهم انها ما راح تطلع لك في كل ماب، يعني من كل 5 مابات يمكن تطلع لك مرة.
Obviously that gives you that opportunity to either consume that parry or in this case more so boost that damage for that 50% more damage taken. And not even
كيف صنعه ليفر.
This is how you want things to go on camera.
وش فيه بحر انت شو مغير الكيبورد عندك انت ولا شو السالفة؟
Fully taking advantage of everything there and barely even moving and doing it comfortably. All right, let's have a look then. We've got Woodish taking it on, Mercenary able to take advantage of those grenades there as well. But in the meantime, 23's unfortunate upset early on in the race here. Yeah, there's a painful sting of irony to this.
شوفينا هنا كيف مات. شوف.
Kill for that safety buffer of health, that little bit of extra health, so you don't die to Tabakai. We're on the way to Tabakai, but
just a clean one shot.
Oh yeah.
والله عطاه وان شوت.
Swiped there. 200 life, no fire res, and that hurts right there. Yeah, just
اكتب بالماوس ما ابغى اشبك الكيبورد. اوكي.
Oh yeah.
23 learns a painful lesson in this last qualifier. Still can recover, for sure.
Yeah,
it's possible.
We don't know how the race is going to pan out yet. There's been plenty of races where everyone has died, so we'll see how that one plays out. It's an early one to recover from if they can keep that mindset under control. But
دمجها ما يتعدى. وش اللي دمجها ما يتعدى 150؟
having that death there.
Maybe it will, you know.
والله يا اخي تحمست انا مع الريس ذا.
Real despair, but he's going to lock in. Get real pissed off at himself, and that's going to give him that Super Saiyan power.
The rage power. Yeah, the rage lock in. Maybe. Yeah. Hopefully, I'd love to see it. I appreciate a comeback king. Someone being a bit of an underdog is always a winner in my books. All right. Relicario realizing is not the right direction.
ضربة ذاك الزعيم.
Look at that positioning from Shackle Coach.
والله ما ادري يمكن كرت عليه. يعني حتى شفت اتش بياتهم لو تلاحظ ترى كلها 200 وشيء الاتش بي. يمكن جت الضربة كريت ولا شيء.
The synchronized boss entry for Kiom and Relicario. We're going to be seeing some of our first Geonors.
And if it's anything like some of the previous races we've seen for Relicario, we're going to see some impressive.
هلا عبد الله هلا.
As long as Geonor doesn't move too much.
Woodish is right there too. So yeah, everybody's praying right now and trying to optimize their strategy to avoid that pesky poetry phase. But first they got to deal.
لا هذا لا عادي هذا الشيلد. هذا وش اسمه هذه؟ انت بلا تموت انت بلا تموت. لحظة اصبر شو اسمه ارجع. هذه ريبابليكا ايش؟ لا حتى هذا ما ادري والله ما اعرفه. هذا وش ذا؟ ايش انت اور؟ ما في شيء ذاك الشيء.
You've got this little face. To throw out a few extra abilities. That's what we want to be. Relicario. He's already.
لا.
She's okay.
عادية يعني.
That's an attack that some of you guys might have noticed in the announcement for swords and
yeah.
That we recently watched. Pretty cool stuff.
We'll be able to use that in the future. It'll be exciting. So Kion moving into phase 2 first there, and Gormus having.
شوف صلوا البوس الأخير.
And Gormus having an excellent Geonor kill here. We just substitute Angormus in here to see that he is caught back up. And he's almost done.
Do it.
Yeah, the meteor slam and positions it right back in the middle.
لا أكت وانا قصد. هذا أنغورمس ذا شاله.
Wow, what a good hunter's first going. That was amazing.
يحطوا السيف كامل حقه. ليش ما شاركت؟ أما أنا أشارك يا بحر صادق أنت. شارك مين؟ الواحد أعرف بقدراته. يا أبوي ذولي حافظين الماب حفظ. شوف ذا اللي تحت يمين ذا اللي اسمه أنغورمس. شوف شلون يتحرك. عرفت؟ كأنه يقرأ من كتاب مفتوح. شوف. إيه ما يرمش. عنده جفاف الحين. شوف شلون كنا حافظ الماب صادق انت. وينك انت؟ شرف محاولة مين يا حبيبي؟ انا اول ما ابدا يدخلوا لدي على طول علي يقعد يشغلني.
What they can get.
Fell behind a little bit in mid-act 1 there. It was possible that he was just taking a little bit of XP or had a slightly slower portion there.
Yeah.
But it all
شزي.
at the boss there as he is confirmed first in.
هو يسألني يقول أنت والمصري شو اسمه المصري يقصد الشزي.
And he is indeed the first to get to Wrathbreaker, so no loss of time here in this in clearing this zone. He has a perfect read through it and over to Wrathbreaker.
سبيد رن بسموذر. سبيد رن مين؟ يا ابوي ذولي بدون شيء ناظر. شفت هذا انغورمس ذا شوف كيف وصل للبوس على طول كأنه حافظ الماب حفظ. انا ما في امل صادق انت. انا ما ولا في امل احفظ الماب اصلا. شوف هذا انغورمس. شوفه تحت يمين. شوف يعني الحين شوف شال البوس دقيقة 34.
We're just getting some nice big grenade hits there, big shock grenade crit or something, doing some big damage, and Wrathbreaker goes down and he starts clearing up some walls to take that loot and get out of there. Nothing too important from Woodish from the loot there, it looks like. I'm also going for the safe approach at the apex here. Obviously, so if you stand right at the apex,
يمكن يجيني اثنين أنا.
You'll see that the hyenas down the bottom, they don't actually come around to you, so you don't have to deal with the ads there at the same time as well. So that's the safest way of doing it, and you're not having spears thrown at you either.
لا لازم.
It's a pretty fast kill there, despite not really taking any bounce damage. Maybe
لا شوف الانسكرايب التيميتهم.
A lot of
شلون تعرف إن القطعة بتصير غالية ولا لا؟ شوف اللي هو ماستر لايف. لا 70 على حسب وش اللي فيه، لأنه 70 يجي فيها 4 ديفاين أحيانا. الانسكرايب اللي يعطيك 4 ديفاين تروح تبيعه ب3 وأنت مغمض. 120 أفضل، 120 اللي يجي فيها 8 ديفاين. بس انه على حسب هل بيجيك ديفينيشن كارد ولا لا. اذا جاك ديفينيشن كارد تروح تشيك عليه في الاكسشينج، الكرنسي اكسشينج، عشان تعرف كم سعر الديفينيشن كارد. 160 ايش؟ الواحد؟ وش هو الديفينيشن كارد ذا؟
In no charges left or very little, but the boss will go down.
A little bit close there, closer than you want. We have seen Wrathbreaker deaths in the past.
أدري والله ما أعرفه.
It appears as Relicaria
لحظة شو اسمه ذا، ربي تفوت رجل الأرنب يعني.
I think that was a rare varnish crossbow.
Okay.
So not something that he will be able to utilize. He does still ID it, of course. He's going to be probably rendering it for the additional gold. We have seen some players switch over to grenades in like season 2 and 3 from other caster setups. I don't think any of that is happening.
Yeah, we had like grenade witches and stuff going on. Everyone was playing grenades for a little bit there. Those grenades
we
are
will
very...
be seeing. We will, however, be seeing some adjustments
هذا جديد شكله.
in regards to the single target setup that is yet to come as we get rid of him with Luxian under super.
ما أدري يعطيك انجيرجن فيل ما أدري وش ذا.
Through the quarry.
Yeah, Lucian on the Huntress moving up into that top 4 slot in production is like not the fastest. Get off the.
لا ابحث باسمه، ابحث ذا رابت فوت.
Maybe we can take a look at the ladder, how we're looking in terms of time. How
هذا انجيرجن فال ما أدري وش يصبر خلينا نشوفه لك.
From the boss, maybe we can pay closer attention to Angormus especially here. So Angormus in the lead for entering the Mountain Quarry with Woodish 18 seconds behind, Kiom 37 seconds behind, and Shackle Coach 83. So he is in there, but still a little bit away. But an impressive run so far from Shackle Coach. Super cool to see.
شفت هذا انجورموس خلص لا شوف 37 دقيقة الحين واصل للمنطقة الثانية في الأكت الثاني.
especially as you get differences in how players take XP, whether they get some nice packs in the zone and take full advantage of that, whether they adjust accordingly to differences in the
ايه سالفة انه يشيل الدرع. ايه لو تلاحظ انهم ما يلبسون الدروع الا عند البوس عشان يصير اسرع. اي جمعة الحدث الجديد اليوم؟ لا الجمعة الجاية ان شاء الله.
The players are constantly trying to min-max here.
لا الجمعة الجاية.
And yeah, a big part of that is the league mechanic as you are seeing.
وين بدري بعد؟
Everybody's trying to do it.
يلا أنا من العوافي.
Some of the gameplay. Ooh, movement speed boots and some rare mods for Angormus. Not going to be equipping those boots just yet, but potentially might be something beneficial for him.
أنا متحمس الباث 1. ليه وش فيها باث 1؟ الريس حقهم يعني.
but that probably puts the final nail in the coffin for 23's attempts. This race most likely possibly rattled by that first one. Suffers another death in
سباقي
breaker or something like that maybe at this point.
أول واحد بيبدأ الظاهر الأسبوع الجاي.
Goku and he went full Vegeta. Unfortunate stuff for 23.
Deep cuts there, Russ. Deep childhood cuts.
I'm old. Sorry.
I'm old. Yep. How's your back feeling this morning today, Russ?
شوف السباق حق باث اوف اكزايل 1 اول واحد بيفوز فيه بن الظاهر. يا بن يا ام اكزايل ولا تاي تاي. هذول اللي اذكر اللي دائما يشاركون في السباقات.
But yeah, a part of the reason why we're mentioning XP so constantly is because the more mobs you kill, the more loot you get. And it's very important that you get good resistances, you get good loot, you get good items that will allow you to min-max your defenses and your offenses for Act 3 and Act 4, as players will primarily be using the talisman to get through those zones as quickly as possible, get to those bosses, and quote
ودش ما أخذ
sometimes even
سبيريت
20,
في نفس
25
المنطقة.
levels
وينه
further
ودش ذا؟
the zone, but we have yet to get there. And
هذا
the
اللي
goal for
تحت يمين.
Gormis, and yeah, that currency is going to be super important as our players will be slamming as much gear as possible, trying to get those prefixes and suffixes in some cases.
Wudish first into Rudia, and I was just looking at Wudish's gear as well. Pretty solid physical damage crossbow there, and a really nice set of damage rolls on one of those rings too. And you're seeing that in play here now as some really big grenade hits go down. That wing blast into getting that. Oh, actually, I don't think secured the lightning buff. Might have been out of range there, so didn't get the bonus. But
يا أخي دمج التويستر مو بصدق. شوف شلون قال بالبوس ذا عن غورمس. عم الغش.
Well, pretty much all of them came back and connected there for 2 volleys. So big damage for Angormus and a nice fast Ruja kill.
شوف يلبس الشيلد بس إذا عند البوس أو الدرع.
Ruja just 11 seconds
شوف.
ahead of Angormus. So slight shuffling in the pack there. Rudish and Angormus
خطيرين.
Shackle Coach trying to keep up. You can see the difference in the levels, but you have to take a look at the checkpoint, right? Oh, actually, there we go. Shackle Coach, 34 seconds behind. And he will be the third person to kill Rugia, so catching up significantly from that 80-second difference that we saw before. Nicely done.
Level 14 on Rugia, though, is 2 levels behind what Angormus and Hyom do it.
That can't be real.
Yeah, just hit 15, so maybe, like, at this point, maybe a level behind. So might have to take some extra XP there, or it might have just been just the end of that level, maybe, in the difference between, say, Shackle and Luxion. So maybe just a little bit behind on XP. Something to keep an eye on. Might have to grab a little bit of XP extra in some of these zones coming up here.
But he was 14 entering Quarry. There's no way he didn't get a singular level.
هل بينزلون باتش نوت؟ ما أتوقع إنهم بينزلون باتش نوت صح؟ لأنه ما قالوا في تغييرات أصلاً. ولا؟
Very aggressive with those twisters.
Yeah, I mean, twisters are really good for soaking up for XP, but sometimes maybe you have like a really good zone read on a slightly shorter zone seed, and you don't get as many mobs, or maybe someone runs into a champ pack that you don't, and ends up being a bit different to your practice. So you need to account for all this stuff on the fly as a racer, and if you start behind a little bit, it can be a big problem because the racers really want to be hitting certain breakpoints for certain zones to maintain, the fact that they're not getting like a too big an XP penalty, because that ramps up really quickly as you get more and more underleveled.
Yeah, just one level difference can make all of the difference. And
absolutely.
Once you start falling behind, there's really no recovering from it in a speed run. So it is a fixed seed race, but the champs and the blue mobs are still going to be random. So our players are always trying to account for that. But a pretty tight race so far. Nicely progressed. A winged spear drop for Shackle Coach. He's not going to be picking it up. His inventory, he's struggling. Another aspect of race.
إيه حق تويستر التويستر ذا خطير صراحة. والله ممتع الريس.
7% IPD roll on the spear there. It needs exalting maybe for an extra prefix.
Nice.
سنتهم حاطينه شوي بدري الواحد جاه النوم.
Woodish first person to enter Halani Gates, but Gormis is not far behind whatsoever.
Oh yeah.
أخذت الدروب الثاني الآن. اي والله خلينا ندخل نشوف.
Quick reset there for Angormis, I think to actually what was that one for? Not sure.
Could be the NPC getting stuck. Sometimes in the zone.
Yeah.
لا شوف أنا أعلق على 100%.
NPC gets stuck and you gotta go for that reset. So if you guys, if you guys are having that issue, that might be something that you might want to go for. But yeah, with our players, I mean, sometimes they also reset for mobs. It does respawn the mobs, and that's another potentially important, either beneficial or detrimental element of resetting some of the zones.
شوف كل الأربعة كلهم يلعبون بهانترس.
Angormis is currently using the worst of 2 winged spears. Like, pretty clear cut. Oh, he might need the strength on the current one, maybe. I don't know. It doesn't seem like he would. He's got a strength amulet. It doesn't seem likely. It might just be a slight misread on the... It's only a small difference in the end, like a...
طب شلون يقلبها ثلج ذي تويستر؟ شو يسوي بيري ولا شو يسوي ولا كيف تصير كذا كلها ثلج؟ الآر وش الآر اللي عنده؟
He is
yeah,
constantly
strange, but-
optimizing his inventory.
وش هي؟
He is
He's got
keeping it in
multiple
mind,
spears to
but-
potentially craft, so 2 winged spears there. The better one is 19%, but it only has a 1 open prefix. So a good exalt though could make all the difference on that one. You land a big flat physical. That's exactly what you want in the Huntress. Big physical damage for that bonus damage from
that.
ice tipped arrows.
Shackle Coach up to Jamanra.
Ow!
He's-
إيه هلا محمود.
Brutish and
I mean, he has
enormous.
to. He has
Yeah,
to be
Shackle
smart.
Coach
تويستر
is
ذا
lightning.
هو تويستر ذا ولا
Yeah,
تورنيدو
that
ولا
does
وشو؟
read to me like maybe falling behind levels and then skipping a bit too much. I don't know. We might have to have a look at that XP breakdown.
إيه
because
صح.
Shackle Coach just jumping ahead
أوكي.
like that all of a sudden makes me a little suspicious that something else is being sacrificed, right?
He is 5th on XP. The ladder does take. a
اليسار
bit of a
حق
hit.
وين اليسار يا
And
شباب؟
Woodish, to give you guys a reference, being level 19 at this stage of the game. You can see
والله
some
ودش
sort
هو
of
الأول
healing
ذا
kind
حق
of
المرسنري.
stage, but this he's taking out alone and
Yes, he's taking out alone against his future here. I'm a little bit.
لا
worried
الأول
that
هذا
it's
مرسنري
gonna
ودش.
be a bit too much for him moving forwards, but yeah, jumping ahead there, but 2 levels behind almost. That's definitely concerning.
طيب هذا ودش ذا شلون يلفل مرسنري؟ لأنه ناوي يلفل في الإيفنت الجديد، ناوي يلعب مرسنري
Yeah,
في
8
البداية.
seconds ahead of Woodish, but at what cost? Meanwhile, Angormus dealing with the end of the Jamanra fight here.
for everybody but one player. Woodish apparently with a sure-footed sigil amulet drop, so a very powerful unique item.
أول شيء لا تاخذ سبيريت. شلون لا أخذ سبيريت؟ قصدك الجيم؟
Almost never saw it in previous races, and then all of a sudden we've had like 3 or 4 of them drop in the qualifiers. This amulet
The
is
community
one of the
effort.
best uniques to get in in these speedrunning races. The sure-footed sigil gives you +1 meter to dodge roll range, which is just insanely strong for speedrunning. Makes things safer and significantly faster, especially running around in war, because players are already just running normally in wolf form and then dodge rolling constantly. Because it's almost as fast as sprinting and way safer. But with sure-footed sigil, it's actually faster and again even safer. So it's a big drop for sure, and we usually see players start to speed ahead a little bit and getting something like that.
And you
So
can
it's
see-
a big one. Woodish.
إذا التويستر بيجلس كذا بلعبه هي ما راح يتغير شيء.
Immediately killing his
نسخة عشان أنا ماخذ سبيريت من أكت
Majority
1.
of the tools are already available for Huntress players, and this is where they're really going to start getting ahead. But staying alive is still a major element as Woodish with that amulet will be the first person to
إيه توتم
enter their
حلو.
own pits. Nicely done by
طيب يا شباب أنا أستأذنكم والله دخت.
still
الله
hanging
يسعد الله خير.
on, but yeah, he
I'm
might
hoping-
تابعنا
on the
اليوم
progression.
الريفيل
Look at
مع
those
بعض.
levels. It is looking scary. We cannot emphasize this
بعدها
enough.
تابعنا الجلسة الحوارية.
Make it work.
ثم تابعنا
I hope so.
الجزء الأول من الريس ذا حقهم. صراحة الريس ممتع جدا جدا جدا. ريتهم بادينها يا ليتهم بادينها شوي بدري. كان والله جلست أتابع إلى النهاية، بس عاد الحين خلاص ما عاد إلا خير. شاكر لكم حضوركم، وإن شاء الله تاخذون الدروب. وعلى كلامهم من شوي هنا في الستريم ذا يقولون إنه في مشكلة في الدروب، لعلها إن شاء الله تنحل ونشوف. أنا بالنسبة لي قالوا بعد 24 ساعة. أنا بالنسبة لي طالع لي 2، بس ما أدري هل إني أنا باخذ 2 ولا لا، ما أدري والله. لا بس أنا أتوقع إنه 1، لأن هذا شوف هذا علق على 100، خلاص ما عاد أقدر أسوي له كليم. ليش؟ لأني أنا مسوي كليم هنا. سويت ريفرش، هذا فاتحها جديد. شوف معلق. فنشوفكم إن شاء الله بداية من بكرة، احتمال نبدأ نسوي كذا رنات مرسنري، لأني بلعب جليشيال بولت دام انهم مغيرين فيه شيء. البلد أنا كان معجبني جدا، نزلت عنه أكثر من فيديو في القناة، فبنبدأ نشوف كيف طريقة التلفيل، وش أفضل طريقة، وش أفضل مهارة، وإلى آخره. فنشوفكم إن شاء الله في بث قادم. تصبحون على خير.